Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
We got a lot going on. We got the big news. Thatcher Demko is out tonight for the Vancouver Canucks. And, again, we'll get into this a lot today. Barry Trotz will be on the program. And, my basic takeaway is I'm not worried about their goalie. But I'm worried about my goalie. You know, what do I want the Predators to play differently because Thatcher Demko's out? Now, look, I think it does affect how likely Vancouver is to win the series and what everything else means. But as far as like the, oh my God, Thatcher Demko's out, what now? You go out there and you play the way you were going to play if Thatcher Demko were in. It doesn't seem all that difficult to me. But we got a lot of Preds to get to today, but we're going to start with the Titans pre-draft press conference. So the Titans sent out an email saying that there was going to be a pre-draft press conference at 1 o'clock today. Now, Ian, who did you expect to hear on the Titans pre-draft press conference at least talk first when they held the pre-draft press conference? Last year, it was just Rand Carthon, no Mike Vrabel, and Vrabel would later tell me they just felt like they were better off with one voice, which made me think that Vrabel didn't want to do it. But I go back to Ian, who did you expect to hear start the Titans pre-draft press conference when we all knew that there was going to be a pre-draft press conference at 1 o'clock today?
Probably Rand Carthon.
Okay. That was not who started the Titans pre-draft press conference. I thought it was going to be Rand Carthon too. In fact, it's really hard to prepare for the show when I don't know what they're going to say. So kind of my initial thought as far as the pre-draft press conference and how we'd start the show is kind of whatever they hinted at, when they're asked about receiver or tackle or the seventh pick, whatever they're hinting at, the opposite is probably true. Just as far as a potential smokescreen and everything else. Then I was thrown for a curveball when it was not Rand Carthon who opened the press conference, but it was instead the president of football operations, Chad Brinker.
All right, good afternoon. And welcome. We thank everyone for joining us today. It's an exciting week across the NFL where every organization is preparing for the NFL draft. Heading into this week, we want to take the opportunity for you all to be able to speak with our general manager and our head coach, the two men that are leading our draft process. There are so many people that are involved across football operation to allow this process to be successful.
So that's who started it, not the GM, which leads me to this question. Who's running the Titans? Who's making the pick on Thursday? At the end of the day, somebody has to say, we're taking the tackle out of Notre Dame, or we're taking the tight end, or we're taking the quarterback, or we're taking the running back. Somebody has to make that decision. Who? Because normally these pre-draft press conferences are led by the people that are making those decisions. I don't ever remember Steve Underwood starting a John Robinson press conference ahead of the NFL draft. And this is what the Titans have done for the last 2.5 years since they fired John Robinson in the middle of the 2022 season. Again, a stupid decision giving the timing of that decision. This is what the Titans have done since they made that choice, which has been as ambiguous as possible about who's actually responsible for acquiring good players and thus winning football games on Sundays in the fall. That's all last year was a question mark of who's in charge. They hired Rand Carthon and they said collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. And I said, that's great. That's not going to work if you lose. Because if you lose, there's going to be some sides that are taken and this guy didn't. And then we found out actually all those things that we were told about how Mike Vrabel was totally on board with Rand Carthon and, that they were going to work together and they were seeing eye to eye. Actually, that's not true. In fact, Mike Vrabel told Amy, why don't you just make Rand the assistant general manager? We found out that, actually, even though it was obvious to me that there were issues there, they said there are no issues here. And then they fired Vrabel. And then when they fired Vrabel, Rand Carthon got up there and took no responsibility and no accountability for it. Why'd your team stink this year? Well, Mike Vrabel's got a good saying, the ball isn't round, so it didn't bounce our way this year. Who's responsible for Andre Dillard? Who drafted the guard with the 11th overall pick? We don't know the answer. You don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. So then the Titans decided, because that made them look so stupid last season. And this is not even about Rand. I mean, this is not, I'm sure some people are, oh, Jared Stillman's just hating on Rand. I'm actually not, because I think that they're screwing Rand in all of this. But as far as like the structure of the team, we spent all last year trying to decode who was actually in charge. We were trying to figure out who is accountable for this dumpster fire of a football team. And we didn't know. And there's all these conflicting reports like, oh, no, it was the owner that drafted Will Levis. Vrabel didn't even want him. That's what Charles Robinson said. And every time something would come out about the Titans would say, that's not true, that's not true. But remember, the Titans are the same people that told Diana Rossini on Thanksgiving that Mike Vrabel was going to be the head coach next year. So, I mean, can we trust them? I mean, I was excited to hear what they had to say, and I do think there were some interesting nuggets in there. I don't think Rand is toothless in terms of being the general manager, but I've never seen this before. You know, I've never seen what they did last year, where they said collaboration, nobody's in charge. And now I've never seen this, where the Titans take the general manager and technically promote him and make him the executive vice president, and the owner says he's got full roster control, but then also promote somebody else to a president position who's involved with the scouting and the salary cap and all the other things they say he's involved in, and then say, no, the vice president's in charge, not the president, and then they have the president lead the press conference instead of the vice president who's supposedly in charge. I've never seen that before. This does not have to be that difficult, right? I mean, look, I understand there are presidents that run teams, but the Titans already have a president, and his title is CEO, and that's Burke Nihill. And I think Burke Nihill has been involved in all of these processes, like firing John Robinson or firing Mike Vrabel or hiring Brian Callahan. So they've got a president and a CEO, then they've got a president, then they've got a vice president / GM who's in charge of the players, and now we're going to send out the president, the second president, out to go start the press conference. And nobody else thinks this is completely fakaked. The only world with which that this makes sense is in Titanland, where everything is bullcrap all the time. I mean, how hard is it to, hey, this is the general manager. He is in charge of the football team. This is the team president. He is technically in charge of the general manager, but he's not, again, micromanaging day to day, but he's the CEO of the whole building, so he runs the sponsorship deals and the ticket sales and the PSLs and everything else. You know, kind of like what the Predators do, right? We know Sean Henry is not making line changes today in Vancouver. What? I mean, seriously, the Titans, it's the same thing every time. It's just this giant ambiguous bubble of, I'm sorry, but who's in charge? I had somebody that was in the league at one point that told me if you're running the Titans, you're serving 1 million different masters. And I never totally understood that. And now I'm starting to get it. And I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that are like, oh, Jared, you're making a big deal out of nothing. I mean, he just got up there and talked for 6 minutes about the draft process and then turned it over to the other two guys. And you're probably the same people that told me that Vrabel's New England comments meant nothing last year when I kept telling you there is something going on, and the local scribe said, oh, no, there's nothing. And then, Diana came out and said he's the coach, and I'm like, there's something fishy going on. and then they fired him. And a lot of you were like, man, Jared was right about that, which happens all the time, by the way. A lot of you don't want to admit it, but it happens all the time. I say something, I bang on it, bang on it, bang on it, bang on it. You think I'm crazy. You think I'm doing it for clicks and ratings and things like that. And then all of a sudden, the other thing happens that the second shoe falls, and it's like, holy crap, he was right. I'm going to be honest. I think they've demoted Rand Carthon. Like, I don't think Rand Carthon is in charge. I think that it's this, I think Brinker's in charge. I do not think Rand Carthon is running the Titans. And honestly, I don't even like that, because I was looking at this draft. It's like, okay, this is going to be the make or break moment for Rand Carthon, right? Like, you don't get two bad drafts in a row, and we don't know if last year's draft is going to be bad or not. But you don't get two bad drafts in a row. I said that before the 2021 draft, the Caleb Farley, Dylan Radin, Monty Rice draft. I said that. I'm like, hey, John Robinson, I know, everybody thinks John Robinson's farts don't smell, but you don't get two bad drafts in a row. And he blew that one, and later he got fired. So that's how I was looking at this draft with Rand. Like, hey, this is the big daddy here. This is the one where he's putting it on the mahogany. And then they have the president of football operations get up and open the press conference and then turn it over to what felt like his subordinates. And then I was told after they made the move to promote Chad Brinker and technically promote Rand, even though I think they demoted Rand, they decided oh, no, Jared, this is different. Chad's just in charge of the field turf, the equipment, the IT department, security, the things that go along with the football team that are important to the football team, but it's not about, who's the right guard or the left guard. And then he's the guy going to the Senior Bowl to scout the prospects. So, I can't tell you exactly what's going on because I don't know. And that's the problem. Everybody should know who's in charge of the Titans. Everybody should know who's accountable for what happens on Thursday night. Everybody should know that there is somebody over there where the buck stops with them. And the answer is, for the second year in a row, the Titans have some kind of super system that we're all too stupid to understand, that, we don't get it, they do. This is the way the NFL is going. This is right. Just like I told you last year's bullcrap wouldn't work, this is not the recipe for success for a pro sports organization. When the Predators make a trade, I know who makes that trade. I don't know with the Titans. I don't have a clue. I don't. And I'm not somebody who just thinks the owner should stay out of everything. I know that when it comes to the Patriots, for instance, the owner's going to be involved in what they do with the third pick. That's the owner. And I know where the owner lies with this team. I know she's at the top. But, you talk about just completely cutting your GM's legs out from under him by taking a guy that he hired, promoting him, telling us that that's not really promoting him over the general manager that hired him, and then have him get up there and give a speech to introduce the guy who's supposed to be higher than him on the pecking order, even though his title is vice president, which is below president. None of this makes any sense. That's the problem. That's how we're starting. 615-737-1025. The Titans can't just hold a normal press conference like everybody else. They got to do something that I'm sitting here saying, what the hell's going on? I'm sitting here watching the press conference on my computer, and I see Brinker up there, and I'm like, Brinker? Is this going to be one of these, we've decided to make a change because so-and-so, such and so. What's going on here? And I'm telling you this, Jared Stillman, he's just doing this because he's yeah, you said that last year too. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. What in the hell is going on with the Titans? Now, I have an opinion as to what I think is happening. How I think they're being run. I have no sourcing on this. This is a gut feeling of what I think's happening over there, and quite frankly, I don't like it. We'll do that next. 615-737-1025. We're off and rolling. It's a big day around here. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
We have worked really well together and worked really hard to be prepared for what we're about to do this weekend and beyond, for that matter. Listen, we all know size and speed wins in this league. And we are excited about the additions that were made during the free agency process. We were able to acquire some key players at positions of needs before we headed into this process. But as we all know, if you look across the league at the organizations that continually to rise and at the top, operate at the highest level, the championship type organizations, they ultimately build their football teams through the draft. And that is our philosophy as well. I know what we did this past offseason. I think the vision is static. It does not change. But the strategy on how to get where we're trying to get to, sometimes you have to adapt and have to adjust based off the circumstances.
Titans president of football operations, Chad Brinker, opening the press conference today before he turned it over to the vice president, Ran Carthon. But Rand's supposedly the one that's in charge Thursday night. Come on now. Ian, what is the theory that this show subscribes to, I would say, as constantly as any other potential theory one could subscribe to?
Talking about the duck theory?
The duck theory. If it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, chances are it's a duck, right? Doesn't it feel like Chad Brinker's been promoted above Ran Carthon? If he's the one that's introducing Ran Carthon at the press conference, and he's the one that's saying, our process is right. We have been working very hard. We are determined and dedicated to find the best of the best of the best of the best, sir. Now let me turn it over to my subordinates.
Yeah, I guess you could argue that.
That's what it feels like. So here's what I think's happening. And again, I have no sourcing on this, though I do know. I was told that last year, Ran Carthon reported to Amy Adams-Strunk and to Burke Nihill, who was the team president and CEO. Now, Ran Carthon reports to Amy Adams-Strunk and Chad Brinker, the president of football operations. I assume Chad Brinker reported to Ran Carthon last year, so Chad has effectively been kicked up over Ran on the depth chart. So that means Chad Brinker's in charge and Ran Carthon's not in charge, right? I don't know. Neither do you. Here's what I think's happening. And again, I have no sourcing on this. This is just my gut here. Again, we're operating by the duck theory. And I think we get a little leeway on this because we were right about it last year and everybody else said we were wrong. I think the Titans are being run by a 3-person committee, and I think Chad Brinker reports to Amy. That's what I think happens. I think it's a 3-person committee of Chad Brinker, Ran Carthon, and Brian Callahan. Thus, there's an odd number, so any dispute ends up, there's going to be 2 on one side and 1 on the other. But I think that each guy is equally as powerful, and I think that they're all working together. And if you listen to the stories they tell, you kind of see a little bit of that, right? Like when Rand did the Titans podcast or did that speaker series that they turned into a podcast with Mike Keith and Brian Callahan, and they talked about Calvin Ridley. And he said that they had missed out on some free agent targets. So he went to take a shower, and while he was taking a shower, he thought about Calvin Ridley, and he got out of the shower, and he had a towel around his waist, and he told Chad Brinker, hey, we need to be in on Calvin Ridley. And Chad Brinker took it to Brian Callahan, and they all met in Brian Callahan's office, and they talked about, I think it's a 3-person committee. And I think that's bad business. Because I think, again, in the NFL, it should be run by one person. No matter how much the Titans believe that collaboration is the key to success, the Chiefs are run by Andy Reid, and the 49ers are run by Kyle Shanahan. Whether you like it or not, that's reality. But I think this is a 3-man committee. And the reason I think the Titans love this 3-man committee is because they feel like, well, with this 3-man committee, we'll get the best of everybody's brain, and if there's a bad idea, we'll weed it out because 2 will be better than the 1 bad idea. I mean, think about it. 3 minds, better than 1, don't you think? But you guys know how the NFL works. You know the NFL works with a structure of 1 guy's at the top and everybody works for the guy that's at the top. But I don't think, how do you think Tom Landry would have felt about a 3-man committee? How do you think that Bill Belichick would have worked with a 3-man committee? Andy Reid ain't working with a 3-man committee. I'll tell you that much right now. Neither is Howie Roseman. But you keep doing it your way, Titans. The doing it your way, Titans, over the years has produced exactly 0 Super Bowls. Just wanting everybody to know that. So that's what I think's going on. And honestly, I don't like it. Somebody tweeted me and said, why don't you just tell Rand he should step down? I'm like, because I don't think Rand should step down. I thought the Titans should have cleaned house at the end of last year and started over so that it's not this constant fakakta musical chairs of what all's going on. Who's in charge? We don't know. Who's making the decisions? I don't know. The owner decides, okay, I don't like you anymore. Now I like you. And then keeps doing I don't think that will ever work. But as far as like telling Rand, like, you should step down, I don't believe that. In fact, I was a little hopeful today that we would say, okay, this is the draft. Like, this is the draft that's going to define Rand Carthon. Because either they're going to get this team better or they're not. You blow the 7th pick, you're gone. But now, I don't even know if you could fire Rand Carthon if he blows the 7th pick, because I don't even know if he's making the 7th pick. But nope, I'm sure the Titans, I'm sure their way will work. You know, their way last year worked so well. In fact, over the last 3 years, the Titans have had 3 separate moments where they've announced to everybody their leadership plans for the future. 2 years ago, it was Mike Vrabel and John Robinson dueling contract extensions, hands held. These guys are leading us to the next generation. 2 years later, they're both gone. The next year, it's Rand Carthon from the 49ers, Mike Vrabel stays, and they're equal, and they're going to work it out, and they're going to collaborate better than any two you've ever seen. It's like Bert and Ernie. You don't know who's more important. Then that didn't work. And now it's, well, this guy's the president. This guy's the vice president. Who's in charge of the football team? Technically, it's the vice president instead of the president. Okay, so who's going to go scout the players at the Senior Bowl? The president, who's not in charge other than the vice president. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. I think you guys think that I want Rand to fail. That's not true, because I'm a Titan fan, and I want the Titans to win. And if you've ever seen me at a Titans game or, watched a Titans game with me, you know I ain't happy when the Titans lose. That being said, I'm kind of angry about all this because as far as the Rand and my opinion of Rand and then how that's gotten blown out of proportion and everything else, I kind of want to see, okay, let's see. You guys talk about let Rand cook. I think that they've got a new chef. I'm with you guys. Let's see. Let's see if he can do it. Not let's see if he can be a part of a 3-person committee that can do it. So today, I was not expecting to go here today. But then they started off in the most ambiguous way possible, and they do this to themselves. They never make it simple. I don't think it's that hard. But this is who they are. This is what they do. And it shouldn't surprise us, I guess. 615-737-1025. What are your phones on this next? A lot of you want to weigh in. Again, that's 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company. Again, the big news on the hockey front, and we will get to it. Somebody texted me or tweeted me and was like, Jared, there's a big playoff game today. We have tons of playoff coverage, and the big news today is that Thatcher Demko is out. The goalie in Vancouver is out for today. 615-737-1025 is our phone number here on the program. And let me tell everybody to tune into 94.9 The Fan today as Vandy Baseball takes on UT Martin with first pitch at 6. Vandy Baseball is brought to you by Smoky Mountain Tops, your countertop experts. Visit SmokyMountainTops.com.
Is it a Rand decision or is it a consensus decision?
No, it's a us decision. Everything we do is us, and that's why we spend the time that we spend together and understanding where we are. A-Rob and I were kind of going back and forth this weekend on a couple guys, and, I texted him. I was like, hey, man, I think we're low on this guy, and in my opinion of watching. And so if A-Rob, he's going to come back with the facts. And he's like, hey, scouts see him here, the coaches see him here. And I was the high guy. So I was like, all right, maybe I'm wrong. And so it's a us thing. Last time I checked, I'm not devising a scheme. I'm not calling any plays. But it's my understanding of what he wants, what Denard wants, what Colt wants, on all three phases. And it's our job to go out and find that for him.
That sounds good. That's not really how the NFL works. The idea of, oh, no, this is all of us in making these decisions. And this is, we went through this last year. We went through this last year. At some point, somebody has to make the final decision. Somebody has to be the person who's accountable. But with the Titans, it's always a moving target, and we never know. And somebody tweeted me and said, what are you talking about? Brinker was always above Rand Carthon. No, he wasn't. Rand Carthon hired Chad Brinker. And now Brinker's above Rand. And because Brinker doesn't do anything that's not football related, it's one thing to say, okay, well, Berg Nihill's the president, but he handles, the CEO element of it. The mayor wants to meet. That's a Berg Nihill thing. That's different. But Brinker does football stuff. Again, let's use the Predators as an example. Sean Henry is technically Barry Trotz's boss. But Sean Henry is not going to Nova Scotia to scout out the 15-year-old prospects that they might draft in 2 years. Chad Brinker is. So I don't know what to make of it other than the Duck Theory says this is totally screwed up. And predictably, people are mad at me. But you were mad at me last year over all the Vrabel stuff. And I was right. And so I get this one too. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Dustin has been hanging patiently and is going to kick us off today. Thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead, Dustin.
What's up, Jared? It smells like a duck, walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. This is year in, year out. As a Titans fan, the order of operations swaps so much you can never get consistency. You never know who's the who and never know who's the not. They say they're not going to fire a guy. Believe it or not, a week later they're going to fire him.
Sure.
I hate hoping they draft elite talent because they come here with no chance of winning a Super Bowl, and these guys deserve better. Henry deserves better. He moved on from us. Bless his soul. But this is on Amy. We can never figure out who it's on, so you got to go to the head of the snake. And Amy, I love you. You love the Titans. Honey, we all love you.
Easy on the honey, brother. That is offensive.
Well, it's offensive to you, but, ma'am, this,
better.
If you love them, set them free because you're making these swaps so frequently and nobody knows who's the who and who's the not.
So I agree with that. Thank you for your call, Dustin. Here's what I think. I believe, and everything you said about Amy, I back. I mean, Amy has put up the money for the team this year. I mean, they have spent in free agency. And I have told you guys that, I think Amy's heart is truly where it's at. I have no problem with this woman running the football team or owning the football team. I have no problem with that at all, even if I don't agree with everything that she does, because I don't agree with everything that everybody does. And everybody doesn't agree with everything that I do. I get it. But I do agree that, if we're going to do the Rand Carthon thing, right? If we're going to say, hey, no, Jared, you're wrong. Rand is a great evaluator. Rand's relationships are next level. Rand can run the football team and run it well, and you'll be wrong. If that's the case, let him do it. I'm not against that. And I'm not a Rand Carthon fan. In fact, Rand said something today that really pissed me off. I'm not a Rand Carthon fan, but I at least want to see if he, let's let him do it. Instead of telling me, no, he can do it, but we're going to promote somebody over him just because. Well, don't do that. And at the end of the day, of course, it's the owner that makes that decision. And so I do love Amy. And I just really believe that this kind of thing is kind of stupid. You know, if you wanted to make Chad Brinker the president of football operations and have him be the guy in charge, then make him the guy who's in charge. I mean, it would be demoting Rand, even if you pay Rand more money. But, you know, go ahead and do that. But they didn't do that. They promoted both of them, and I'm still not even sure who does what. Jeff is up next and has been waiting patiently. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Jeff?
I have 2 quick points, Jared. First of all, I do agree with you that the titles of Brinker and Carthon are completely fakakta, and we don't know what's it's weird. It's a weird situation. Okay, it's messed up. Second of all, however, you have to look at the clip that you played at the beginning of your show. What did Brinker say? He said, "Now I'm handing it over to Rand and Coach Callahan, who will lead our draft this weekend."
So Coach Callahan, who's not in charge, is now equally as in charge as Rand, is what you're telling me.
What did Rand say when Callahan was hired? That this is the word that you hate, that they would collaborate together on all phases of the football operation, and presumably that includes the draft. So is Rand going to pick players that the coach doesn't want? No, of course not.
So I will say this, Jeff. That sounds good. That sounds good, and I appreciate your call. That's not how this works. Like I told you guys this last year when everybody said, well, you know, Vrabel's going to tell Rand what to go look for, and Rand's going to go get it, and that's Rand, we need some returners. And I'm like, that's not going to work in the NFL. No, Jared, it's going to work. And it didn't. You had no left tackle last year, or right tackle, for that matter. That doesn't work. The idea of, well, I mean, you know, it's going to be a collaboration. Why would he pick a player that Brian Callahan doesn't like? Well, I think in some instances because, well, he thinks the guy's a good player. That's why he's GM. That's why he's paid the money to run the team. And I don't think, you know, again, to say, oh, well, these two guys are running the draft, so Brinker is totally out of it. That would be like them saying Rand's in charge, but we gave another guy the title of president. He's vice president. By the way, I talked to a former general manager today, and I said to the former GM, I said, if you had a player that you loved, Neighbors, Harrison, Bowers, Adunze, whomever, you loved them, and you wanted to take them, and Brian Callahan and Bill Callahan begged you, don't do it. Give us Joe Alt. If you give us Joe Alt, then Joe Alt is going to be Orlando Pace, and he's going to go right to the Hall of Fame. Would you do it? And that former general manager told me if I was in my second year like Rand is, I probably would. But now that I've done it for years, I would not do that. I would say, sorry, we're taking the guy, and then we'll figure it out. There's a player by the name of Bryant Mix, who the Titans took in the second round when they were the Oilers, I believe, in the Eddie George draft in 1996. I could be wrong. It might be 95 that he was taken. Bryant Mix is the guy's name. And Floyd always talked about Bryant Mix as a guy that all the scouts and all the coaches were just in love with, and he didn't see it. He said, I just don't get it. Like, when I watch tape, I don't see. Took him anyways. He was a bust, and Floyd learned never to do that again. So it's easy to say, oh, well, I mean, of course they're working together. That's perfect. But that doesn't work in the NFL. We've always talked about it. We spent all last year talking about it and watching it. And now you're basically doing the same thing, except with guys that might actually like each other this time, and you're expecting a different result. 615-737-1025. More of your phones in on this, 615-737-1025. And I did say there was one thing Rand said that did stick up my craw. We will get to that coming up here on Stillman & Company, 1025-1063 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks, do not miss the best draft coverage. You know it. Between our analysts of Derek, Chris, and Trevor, plus we react in live time to the NFL Draft Thursday, Twin Peaks in Madison, 6 o'clock for our draft coverage, home of the 29 Degree Beer, presented by Harmon Tractor and Equipment, ESPN Bet, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning.
All right, good afternoon and welcome. We thank everyone for joining us today. It's an exciting week across the NFL where every organization is preparing for the NFL draft. Heading into this week, we want to take the opportunity for you all to be able to speak with our general manager and our head coach, the two men that are leading our draft process. There are so many people that are involved across football operation to allow this process to be successful.
That was Chad Brinker starting the Titans draft press conference today. The president then turned it over to the vice president, but the vice president is supposedly in charge. Huh? Damian texts in and says, what difference does it make who's number 1, 2, or 3 on the front office depth chart as long as we get it right, says Damian. Why get bent out of shape on a press conference? I've not been out of shape about the press conference. The press conference itself was fine. Rand said one thing that drove me insane. But the reason why this matters is because this is the same thing that you ran into last year, which is who is accountable. You guys keep saying, hey, let Rand cook, Jared. But then when they promote somebody over him, isn't that the opposite of what you all want to see happen? And for me, it's the opposite of what I want to see happen. You know, the thing that drove me crazy that Rand said today was when he was talking about how he feels like this is his first draft, because that sounds good, but that's not true. This is what he said earlier today.
To me, this year's new, different system, different head coach. I was talking with Tom Jones, I think earlier today, and I was telling him this is my first draft, because this is a new way of doing things and how we're going to do it. So it's new. It's never unsettling. I've been up since 2:30 this morning, just different things pop in your head, and you can't go to sleep, and you grab your phone, and now you're researching to the point where my wife put her hand on my shoulder. She was like, just put it down, and so it's that happens, you know what I mean? And so I'm excited, about the challenge. Excited to help bring, Brian's vision to light.
This feels like my first draft. Why? Because last year's wasn't good? So when Skoronski becomes a superstar like you guys all tell me he will, or Levis becomes a franchise quarterback like a lot of you all assume that he will be, who gets credit for that? Well, the answer is it's going to be Ram. But he's already telling you, oh, no, last year doesn't count. Well, I mean, that's convenient, but that's not true. And so everything the Titans have done, it makes me feel like it's trying to skirt accountability. So that's why it matters. If you draft good players, I'll give you credit. If you blow it, I'll put it on you too. That's like John Robinson. I was on his ass about Isaiah Wilson. I hated the Caleb Farley pick. We joke about how legendary the draft night reactions are when it comes to Monty Rice and Dylan Radins. At the end of the day, John Robinson won 61% of his games. And there is no way to take that away from him because he was running the Titans the entire time. That's what accountability is. Instead, it's like, well, last year wasn't my fault because Vrabel was the coach. So don't blame me for any of that. What if those players are good? Give me all the credit. I don't know. That's not how this works. Let's go to Lance, who's been waiting patiently and is up next here on the program. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Lance?
Yeah, two things. I called in like 6 months ago, and I was kind of harsh on Rand. And I think I've seen some things lately that give me some confidence. I'm happy going into the draft.
Like what?
Well, I like the off-season signings for one. I was under the impression that hat he was wearing was not a Titans hat, and I was corrected on that. So
that is not a Titans hat.
Are you sure?
Yeah, the T hat. Not that, and I don't care about this anymore. And I think Rand was wearing a regular Titans hat today at the press conference, if I'm not mistaken, which I am in favor of. But
I want to give a shout out to Indy Ben though, real quick before this goes.
I don't care about Indy Ben. I don't do the caller on caller stuff. Lance, thank you. So one texter into the text line says Jared Rand said that because we all know Vrabel was the one pulling the majority of the strings last year. Please stop the Rand hate. Do we know that? Like, Ian, do we know that Vrabel was the one pulling the strings last year?
What strings?
Texter
like the
says,
roster?
Yeah, that Vrabel was the one pulling the strings last year.
I don't guess we know that.
I mean, nobody told me that. Like, I don't. So does Rand is he not responsible at all for Skoronski, Levis, Spears, any of these guys? Because I'm told that I'm a hater because he's the one that got DeAndre Hopkins right, and he's the one that drafted Tajay Spears, and he's the one who. So is it just, to me, again, and I said this, you're going to think this is about Rand. And it's not. It's about the Titans. I'm not mad at Rand today. I'm mad at the Titans today. I am mad about the comment about this feels like my first draft because to me that's bullcrap. Like either own it or don't. But don't do the, half in, half out, which they just love doing. Today, I am mad at the Titans. I'm not mad at Rand Carthon. I want Rand Carthon to be, if you're going to put Rand in charge of the team, if you're going to tell me, hey, let Rand cook, baby, if you're going to do that, then make it his and leave there no doubt that it's his operation. The way that there was no doubt that it was John Robinson's operation. Mike Vrabel's the one that stood up before the Titans signed Jadeveon Clowney and said all of that extra noise out there that Clowney doesn't play hard or that Clowney doesn't care about the team or, that wasn't my experience. Clowney was nothing but a true pro when I was in Houston. John Robinson signs him, and it's John Robinson who gets all of the, slander for why the Clowney thing didn't work out. Vrabel gets none of it. Why? Because John's in charge. Because even if Vrabel was on his hands and his knees begging for Clowney, one man decided to sign him. And in this case, it's like, well, now we don't know who's doing what, and it's better off that way, Jared. I told you this last time. I told you last year wasn't going to work. I said that does not work. It works if you win. Because if you win, everything works. But it does not work if you don't win. And the second they weren't winning, we saw it. Right? The comments about, I didn't say Will Levis was starting. The Kevin Byard trade. We started to see, the division of paths as far as how they were going. But I thought you guys told me it was going to work out great. So if Rand's going to be in charge, I want Rand in charge. And I don't want there to be any ambiguity of that. Because I want Rand to be accountable both positively or negatively if they make the best 7th overall pick in the NFL. Just like if they draft Robert Gallery with the 7th overall pick on Thursday night. And then that should lead to Rand being fired. Because that's how this league works. So this isn't about Rand. This is about the Titans. This is about the Titans that always have some super duper way that I'm just too stupid to understand every year, but for some reason they don't win. For some reason, they fired John Robinson in the middle of the year, something nobody would have done. It made no sense to me, and it depressed me at the time when they did that because I was like, oh my God, is my team a stupid team? Is my team the Jets? And so that happened. Oh, no, Jared, Amy had to put her foot down. They didn't win a game the rest of the year, and it cost them the division that they had in their hands. But you're right. You were right. I was wrong. Last year. This collaboration will work. Really? Because Vrabel went to the owner, as reported by The Athletic. Vrabel went to the owner and said, make him assistant general manager. And then that didn't work. But you guys were right. I was wrong. Let's see. Let's see if I get it right 3 years in a row. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. I'm done complaining about that for right now. I've done complaining about it for right now. I'm sure it will come up again. But I do have, as far as I'm concerned, there is a draft element that I think we need to go over. I want to do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Titans pre-draft press conference in the books. Boy, a lot of people are mad at me today for just, again, asking what I think is an incredibly obvious question to an ambiguous situation that the Titans let linger, but that's a different discussion for a different day. It is time for our third Pro Football Focus mock draft simulation.
It's time for a random Jared Stillman mock draft simulation, courtesy of the Pro Football Focus mock draft simulator.
Okay, what to do at 7:38? We start with the latest Pro Football Focus mock draft simulation, which has Caleb Williams. The pick is in at number 1. Caleb Williams at 1. Number 2 to Washington. Drake May. Number 3, New England. Joe Alt at 3 to New England. And by the way, we don't talk enough about New England. Has a big need at left tackle, just like they have a need at receiver and a need at quarterback. New England goes Joe Alt, number 4. Marvin Harrison Jr. to Arizona, number 5. Roma Dunze to the Chargers over Malik Neighbors, the Giants at number 6. Jaden Daniels at quarterback, which means the Titans are on the clock at 7. Malik Neighbors is available, as is Brock Bowers, and as is Dallas Turner. Now, I was not yesterday willing to trade that pick unless I got a king's ransom in exchange for Marvin Harrison Jr. But for some reason, even though I've got Neighbors ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr., it just doesn't feel like everybody else loves him as much. And for some reason, I think that affected me in this exercise because Minnesota, Denver, and the Raiders and New Orleans all want to trade. So what is Malik Neighbors worth to you? The Raiders are at 13. They've got 44 in the second round, and they will not do next year's first. But they will do next year's second. 13, 44, and next year's second on a Raider team that might be good, might be bad. That pick could be the 4th pick of the 3rd round. The Raiders can make or second round. The Raiders can make the playoffs this year. I think that's kind of an iffy thing there. But again, 13, 44, and a second next year. Meanwhile, Denver doesn't have a second rounder. They're at 12. They can give me 76, and they can give me a second and a third next year, but they may not do that. So the Raiders are going to give me a first, a second, and a second next year. Ian, do you think Malik Neighbors is worth a first, a second, and a second next year?
A first, a second, pretty close. Might be.
I made the trade.
Yeah.
So the Titans moved to 13. With the Titans on the clock at 13, both Brock Bowers and Dallas Turner are still available, and Olu Fashanu is available with the 3rd overall pick. Now, Buffalo at 28 wants to trade, and Houston at 42 wants to trade, but for me, that's too far back. I got an elite player that I can pick. I got 2 second rounders. I got 2 second rounders next year. I need to pick. So with that, I decide to make the pick. Tennessee at 13. Me up to the idea of Brock Bowers. I think he's an elite player. I think he's a matchup nightmare. I hate that he didn't run a public 40 time. You know, I hate that. But considering that Alt's gone, and I've already gotten another second and a second next year, I feel like I can take Bowers because I still should be able to get a starting tackle with either my 2 seconds combined to move up into the first round, or at 38 I can get my tackle. So now I've got 44 as well. So I like this trade, and I like the fact that it allows me to take Bowers, so I take him. Now, Fuaga goes at 14. Faltanu goes at 17. At 15. Latham goes at 17. Mims goes at 20. And Fashanu goes at 22. So there's a run on the tackles. And even with my 2 second-round picks, I don't jump back up in order to get there. Titans are on the clock at 38. Washington wants to trade for number 38. They're at 40. Washington offers 40 and a third-round pick next year, but with Jordan Morgan, a first-round tackle, who is a left tackle out of Arizona on the board, I decide, you know what? While that third-rounder next year might be nice, I'd rather just have the tackle. Tennessee at 38, on the clock, makes the pick. Jordan Morgan, tackle out of Arizona. Now, I'm shocked he's there at 38, but there will be guys on Friday that we are surprised are still available. So with Jordan Morgan at 38, now I've got my left tackle, and I've also got Brock Bowers. Now I'm on the clock at 44, which is the Raiders' second-round pick that I got in exchange for moving back. Cincinnati wants to trade to put me at 49, but they won't trade 80. So they won't go from 40 to 49 and give me 80 in the third round. They'll give me 97 and 115, and then they turn that down. So they'll be willing to give me 49, second-round pick, so I'm moving back 5 spots, and a third next year. So now I have to think, okay, I'm moving down 5 spots. Are there 5 players that are available in this draft that I'm okay with either, I can take any of these guys? And on the clock at this point, remember, I've got my left tackle now. I've got a tight end. Ricky Pearsall, this slot out of Florida, is the top player for me that I think, this would be a fit of need and would be a player the Titans could use. Ennis Rakestraw, the corner out of Missouri, very highly rated. I could use him. Chris Jenkins, a defensive lineman, he's available. Boy, that makes me feel old. His dad was a bad boy, man. Darius Robinson still available, and Kingsley Suamataia is also available. So I could move back and get one of those guys. And since I'm fine with those players, I'm like, you know what? Let's make the trade. Let's make the trade. So let's trade with Cincinnati, 44 in the second round, to get 49, 97, and a fourth-round pick next year. Let's make that trade. And so we do. And then that puts us on the clock. And we are sitting there now at 49. But before we get to 49, we start to see a run on some of these players because Cincinnati takes Brandon Fisk. New Orleans takes Bo Nix. Indianapolis takes Ennis Rakestraw. I really like Ricky Pearsall, the slot receiver out of Florida. He's there at 47. So I end up making a deal to get 47. I trade Vegas' second-round pick that I've already acquired by moving back in the first round. I trade 106 in the fourth round, 182, I believe, in the sixth round, and 242 in the seventh round. Who cares about these sixth and seventh round picks? And I make the trade at 47 to the Giants in order to get 47, and they accept. So I'm on the clock at 47, and Tennessee on the clock at 47 makes the pick. Ricky Pearsall out of Florida. I like Pearsall. I think he's a possibility at 38. The fact that he's still there at 47 and I've already got a tackle and I've got a tight end, make the move. That's why I use next year's second to move back up and all the other extra picks to move back up into this year's draft in order to get a guy that I think can start and to use the 47th pick. Now, what sucks is that Darius Robinson goes at 48, who I would have loved to take at 49. So now Tennessee on the clock at 49 with a pick that was acquired by dealing with Cincinnati, and Tennessee makes the pick. Kingsley Suamataia, the right tackle out of BYU. So in this particular simulation, I moved back off of Malik Neighbors, but I got Brock Bowers, Jordan Morgan, Ricky Pearsall, and Kingsley Suamataia out of the deal while also acquiring a 4th rounder next year. That's 4 top 50 players, 2 tackles, a wide receiver, and a tight end. And I think that's doing a pretty good job of building around Will Levis.
Not too bad.
The value that was created by making all those trades and moving and shaking was the value of the 37th pick. So the question here is, would it be worth the 37th pick to not have Malik Neighbors, but to have Brock Bowers? And that was the choice I made here. Your reaction to that, 615-737-1025 plus. A lot of talk about Marvin Harrison, not as much talk about Malik Neighbors, but that may not be what they're saying in the NFL circles. We'll get to that coming up next. And your phone, Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. Nashville's best deal this week is Joyland in East Nashville. Joyland is a fun new concept by Chef Sean Brock, designed to spread joy through his love of cheeseburgers, shakes, buttermilk biscuits, fries, and fried chicken. Get half off a $30 Joyland gift card now while supplies last at theGameNashville.com/deals and enjoy the best burger in town.
Do you have any issues at all with my comp of Jamar Chase?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. All right. What's your issues with that comp?
I think that Neighbors is a little bit quicker twitched and can bend a little bit better after the catch.
Wow. Okay. That's high praise.
So I think he's a little bit better with the ball in his hands than when Chase came out.
Jeez, oh pizza, man. That's Caleb Williams type praise for Malik. Okay. All right. I'm gonna ask you again. Coming out. And you have the fourth pick or whichever pick, the first wide receiver off the board. Malik, Marvin, or Jamar? How rank those guys?
Oh, Jamar, Malik, Marvin. Marvin, Malik. I can go either way.
Oh, okay.
I still have 17 days, but Jamar's number one.
There you go. That was Rick Spielman on his podcast with the first pick, talking about how much he loves Malik Neighbors. In our mock draft simulation, I traded out. Could have had Neighbors, and I traded out. Now, I did this on Sunday, this third mock draft simulation, and I ended up getting Brock Bowers, Ricky Pearsall, and Kingsley Suamataia by being able to trade out. So I got 3 players instead of Neighbors. But then this morning I read in The Athletic where Bruce Feldman has his where he talks to coaches, the Coach Confidential, the one that told us that Traylon Burks was 2 biscuits shy of being a flexed out tight end. And when asked about Harrison, Odunze, and Neighbors, Bruce Feldman said, quote, Harrison is not number 1 to me. This is a veteran wide receiver coach. Malik Neighbors is number 1 on my list, and I think he's number 1 on a lot of people's lists. He's just different to me. He's got some Jamar Chase in him, some DJ Moore, and I hesitate to say this because Tyreek Hill's speed is so different. But Neighbors has some of that kind of burst and is just so explosive off the line of scrimmage. An offensive assistant says in the same story, Neighbors is number 1, and then there's a gap. He is the best wide receiver in the draft in a couple years, maybe more. And I just passed on him. So then, again, keep that in mind. If I had read that with Neighbors available, would that have swayed my thinking? And I don't know the answer because it's hard for me to turn around and say, okay, well, I got Bowers and I got a slot receiver, a very highly rated slot receiver in Pearsall, and I got a right tackle while also getting the left tackle at 38. Let's go to your phones, which are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Mike has been waiting patiently and is up next here on the show. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, Jared, thanks for taking my call. So my biggest concern, well, I think getting Brock Bowers that late in the first round is exciting, and I'd be pumped to see if he turns into the next Antonio Gates or just that franchise tight end that we haven't had since, I guess you could say, Frank Wycheck. Or my concern is the other 3 guys. I need players that can start from day one, and I'm not entirely sure if we would still, even with the drafting of those 2 tackles, wouldn't need to still go out and get a veteran tackle to potentially make sure that we're ready to go for the start of the season. I just don't know if you see anybody that's not one of those top 2 tackles as being day one ready starting left tackle for this team. Now, just listen.
Yeah, so I think the idea about being ready day one is kind of overrated. I talked to somebody that was an executive in the league for a while, and they told me, I said, now these offensive linemen can't practice. So if you take Fashanu, who needs work, as opposed to Alt, who probably doesn't, that big is a drop-off, what do you make? They go, it'd be a problem for a couple games. But then after a while, there'll be enough for Bill Callahan to work it out. And we're worried about a career, not a couple of games. The idea of, I need someone to play right now. Do you? Because Jeffrey Simmons didn't play right now. And Jeffrey Simmons is pretty good. So do you really have to have somebody that plays right now? 5 years from now, you won't remember if that person played right now or sat a little bit on the bench. And by the way, I did get you somebody who's playing right now, and that's Bowers. And I think Morgan probably starts right away in the NFL as well. Uh-oh. Titans and Truth, Chris is up next here on our program. Chris, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Jared, I understand the haul that you kind of got, but at the same time, Jared, I cannot get on board with you on this one.
Passing on Neighbors?
You passed on Malik freaking Neighbors.
I know.
I would not have done that.
So ask yourself this. What would you rather have? just the way this played out. Malik Neighbors and Jordan Morgan, or Brock Bowers, Jordan Morgan, Ricky Pearsall, Kingsley Suamataia. Actually, take Morgan out of it because we took him at 38. So Neighbors or Bowers, Pearsall, Suamataia, and the 97th pick from Cincinnati.
I'm still going Neighbors. He's the better player. I go with Neighbors. And then at 38, I will probably work on some trading back, see if I can get a third-round pick off of that.
I'm taking my tackle at 38. If I don't take my tackle at 7, I'm taking my tackle at 38.
Absolutely. But I wouldn't have passed on Malik Neighbors. Not for Brock Bowers. I mean, no disrespect to him, but Neighbors could be a generational talent, and he's your DeAndre Hopkins replacement after he's gone, and everything keeps going.
So I am so torn. Chris, thank you. I am so torn on Malik Neighbors because we, 2 weeks ago, did this thing where we asked everybody about, hey, if Neighbors and Alt are there, who do you take? And everybody said Alt. And now the more I read and hear about Neighbors, as far as like what people in the draft are saying, the more I'm like, well, they say I can get a tackle at 38. I mean, if he's really, truly elite, I'm talking about shows up day one and he's a star. That's what Randy Moss did. Like, again, I'm torn on all this. I don't have a problem. With Chris, sometimes I get on people when they have different opinions than mine, and I usually get on them when I think they have the wrong opinion. I'm not getting on Chris for that because I understand the idea of thinking, hey, that's great that you got Bowers, Pearsall, and Suamataia and the 97th pick out of that. I'd rather have Neighbors. You are completely entitled to that opinion. And if they take Neighbors at 7 on Thursday night, you will not hear me complain about it. Not one iota. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. We got some big news on the Predators front ahead of tonight's game number 2. We will get to that next. This could be, as Adam Vingan texted me, series-changing news. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. And there will be Predators coverage tonight. Apparently, Predators playoffs tonight will follow us right there at 6 o'clock. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
injuries always play a big factor. You literally just broke news, I believe, 10 minutes ago about Vancouver goalie situation that's taking place. Is that the big news right now as we're a few games into all these series? And what else do we keep an eye out for, Elliot?
That's a big one. Thatcher Demko, and it'll work well with the shirt. U.S.-born goalie, could have been potentially starter on an Olympic team in a couple of years. Really, really elite goaltender. He is injured, and as you know, guys, it's the playoffs. They're very careful. Nobody wants to say anything. We know he's not going to play tonight. I've been told he's questionable for the rest of the series, games 2-7 against Nashville. But that's a huge deal. You know, Demko is one of the best goaltenders in the league. He was out for close to the end of the regular season, but the Canucks timed it. They were careful with him. They brought him back a little bit later than he wanted to play because they wanted to make sure he would be okay. And he got hurt sometime in game 1. He made a huge split save. You know, I kind of wondered if that was it. People are just being very careful. I'm told it's a new injury. It's not related to a previous one, but I don't know exactly what it is. And obviously they're very concerned.
Elliot on the Pat McAfee Show. Thatcher Demko is out. And a lot of people today, we start the show off on Titans, are like, well, Jared, Thatcher Demko's out. What do you have to say about it? So now you're going to hear it. On one hand, this is absolutely a humongous advantage for the Predators as far as facing Casey DeSmith compared to Thatcher Demko. I mean, Demko, for instance, has a save percentage of .981. DeSmith has a save percentage of .895. Ian, what do I always say? If you've got a save percentage under 900,
You don't think they're very good?
I think you suck if you've got a save percentage under 900. That is the line of demarcation for me. And Casey DeSmith is under 900. For the year, Demko, when he's in net, and again, take out the overtime losses and things like that, Demko, they win 69% of the time. When DeSmith is in net, they win 57% of the time. That is, again, a humongous difference in between the two goalies. I just think about it like this. How would you feel if it was your goalie? Because you're supposed to have an elite goalie, and if it was your goalie who was out, and Kevin Lankinen was going in there, and I think Lankinen's numbers are much better this year than DeSmith's, though I'd have to look it up, but I would think that we would look at that and view it as an advantage for Vancouver. So, again, I don't root for people to get hurt, but this does help the Predators out. My initial reaction to Thatcher Demko being out, though, it kills me that they didn't win game 1. It kills me. Because, again, we all know they had game 1 in their hands, and I'm not as angry about game 1 today as I was yesterday. But they had game 1 in their hands, and they crapped it away. And now imagine the pressure on Vancouver if they're down 1 game and Thatcher Demko's out. Instead, they're up 1 game and Thatcher Demko's out. And so it's like, okay, well, you know, Casey's done it for us this year, and Casey can do it this game. The other thought that I have on the whole Thatcher Demko being out and what does it mean and what do you think and, this is great and advantage Predators and all that is I really hope that the Predators don't think about this a lot because it's impossible for them to not be aware of the news. Obviously, they've got phones. They talk about things. They have TVs in the hotel. I mean, these guys are done with morning skate at 11 o'clock and they don't play until 7 local time there. So, I mean, they've got their phones and they got TV. They know Thatcher Demko's out. But it takes a lot of mental discipline and understanding to pretend that it just that doesn't affect you. Well, you want the Predators to play less hard now because they know that the goalie that's going to be in there for Vancouver is not as good as the guy who we thought was going to be in net for Vancouver tonight? Of course not. But it's very difficult for guys not to think about that. Greg Maddux pitched in a World Series game one time, and the guy he was facing sprained his ankle. And he hopped around after, either the first strike of the at-bat or the second strike of the at-bat, and he was hopping around, and he stands back in the batter's box, and they asked Maddux after the game, they go, what do you make of, the guy injuring his ankle, rolling his ankle on a swing? And Greg Maddux goes, I don't care about that. Because Kurt Gibson hit a home run to win a World Series game on one leg. You think I'm going to care about this guy, and his ankle hurting? Oh, okay, now I'll pitch him different. No, it's the same. And so with the Thatcher Demko news, look, it's not a bad thing for the Predators. I promise you that. But I do worry about the Predators, players seeing that, maybe feeling a little bit of a sigh of relief. And the second that you start to mentally feel good about something in a hockey series is the second you get turned upside down. So I hope this doesn't affect the players at all. Now, maybe it affects the coaching a little bit because maybe there are different weaknesses between Demko and DeSmith. And so now you're telling the players, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to attack this part of the net, or we're going to, just screen him this way differently than you would Demko. But for the most part, I'm pretty sure everything that the Predators want to do is probably the same. It's just a different goalie who's in net. And so I hope that these players don't start thinking about, now thank God that Demko's out and DeSmith's in there. And let's not discount the fact when it comes to the Predators. I don't know about you guys, but I cannot tell you how many times over the years the Predators have gone up against some Scarbini goalie and gotten beat. Like, I know of playoff games off the top of my head where they got beat by Scott Darling. There was Andrew Hammond, the Hamburglar with Colorado. He beat you. The guy hadn't played hockey in 2 years. He starts game 5, a closeout game at Bridgestone Arena, and beats you. So I am always weary of kind of the backup goalie going in there specifically against the Predators, even though he's got a save percentage sub 9. I'm not disappointed or angry that Thatcher Demko's out. It is advantageous. But at the same time, I think as far as, now this totally changes everything. It shouldn't change that for us. And I can promise you as far as, just the mentality that Vancouver's got. It reminds me of the Sunday Night Football game, 2018, the Titans, last game of the year, winning you're in against Indianapolis, and Mariota was hurt. And so we did a special Jared and the GM that day, leading up to the big play into the playoff game. And the old man said, Titans are fine. He said any throw we'd ask Marcus to make, Blaine Gabbert can make. And I sat there that day, and there was a part of me that wanted to yell at him and say, that's not true. Blaine Gabbert sucks. But as I was sitting there, this was kind of when the radio game started to slow down for me a little bit. I'm thinking, okay, I can do that, and then he's going to turn off for the rest of the show and get all huffy and puffy. Or I can accept that this is what the GM would be telling his team. Hey, we're fine with Blaine Gabbert. And that's the exact same way I think I'd feel if Kevin Lankinen had to go in net right now. Which is, hey, had to play with Kevin Lankinen in net this season, and you did well enough. If I'm Vancouver, I'm saying, hey, we went in there with Casey DeSmith, and Casey DeSmith, we won 57% of the time when we put Casey DeSmith in the net. So why would I have any problem putting him in the net now? So I know a lot of people are excited, like, oh, yes, this breaking injuries. What does it mean? And what it means for me is the Predators still have to play the same way they were planning to play this morning when they woke up and thought they were going against Thatcher Demko. It shouldn't change anything for the Predators. Maybe it changes things defensively for Vancouver, but it shouldn't change anything for the Predators. And even then, I'm still skeptical. I'm still skeptical because I've seen Kevin Lankinen beat the Edmonton Oilers this year, which I didn't think was possible. And I've seen you lose to bad goalie that I've never heard of after bad goalie that I've never heard of over the years. Now, I know DeSmith because he was the backup for all those years in Pittsburgh. I think at one point to Matt Murray, but most recently Tristan Jarry, he's been the backup goalie. So I just, he's been on teams that have made it to the playoffs before. I wouldn't discount it. Let me see if Casey DeSmith has ever played a playoff game before. I'm sure he's probably gotten in there at some point, and pull a goalie because he's getting his rear end spanked. But
Yeah, let's see. It looks like just one with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I'm not going to celebrate it at all. You know what? I think I remember this.
One in the 21-22 season.
Yeah. So he started, and he didn't get a win or a loss for it. I think I remember this. I think Kristen Jerry got hurt.
Wow, he made 48 saves.
So Jari got hurt. I believe this was against the Rangers in 2022. Jari got hurt, and then DeSmith went in for Jari, and then DeSmith got hurt, and they took some guy in there who had been eating like Chinese food during the intermission, and he had to go out, and he won the game. You remember what I'm talking about?
No, for some reason I don't.
He was eating like barbecue pork or whatever, like in the intermission. Oh, it's killing me. I can't remember this guy's name, but I
Louis Domingue?
That's it. I'm certain that's what happened.
Yeah, Louis Domingue, he's like notorious for cooking.
So he was eating barbecue pork or sweet and sour pork or something like that, and he had to go in the game and ended up winning it in overtime or something like that. So Casey DeSmith's got one start in the playoffs, and again, to Ian's point, in that game, he stopped 48 of 51 shots.
That's a lot. Yeah,
That's a lot.
That's pretty good performance.
That is a good performance. So make of that what you will. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. There is one thing that I expect from the Predators tonight. One thing that I really expect that needs to be different. And it's one person who can be the one that changes this. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
you mentioned the power play. Did they make an adjustment on their penalty kill that kind of changed it for you? Or?
No, I don't think so. It's kind of what we saw. I thought we did some good things and some things that maybe we didn't have the urgency or the pace that we should have in those situations, especially, the two at the end of the second period there where you get one and it changes the whole complexity of the game. Had an opportunity in the third. And we've been doing a really good job of that of late, of taking advantage of those situations and understanding that they're big points of the game. Usually that's when our power plays at our best. So it is what it is. We got one, and we'll work on it and hopefully be a little better tomorrow.
There you go. It was Andrew Burnett yesterday at practice talking about the power play. And right there, it sounded, Ian, like he was kind of putting it on the players when he was saying, hey, it wasn't anything we, did that they did. It was we weren't, fast enough. We weren't moving the puck fast enough.
That's been a consistent theme of his, I think, when the power play is struggling a little bit. Just gets a little stale and he wants to see the passes quick passes.
So here's my thing with Andrew Burnett. I don't care whose fault it is, players his, as far as what happened, to the power play on Sunday night. It was very disappointing to me to see Rick Tocchet, who I think is a great coach, make the adjustment in the middle of a period to neutralize the Predators' power play the way they did by clogging up the neutral zone and saying, we're just not going to let you enter the puck. We're just going to make it very, very difficult in order to put the puck into the it's just going to make it very difficult for you to enter the puck into the offensive zone. So here's what I expect tonight. And there is a difference between expect and hoping for. When it comes to Saros stealing a series, at this point I'm hoping for it. I'm not expecting it. I do expect Andrew Burnett to fix the power play tonight. I expect there to be a response to the problems that they had at the end of game one. Because the power play is his baby. He is the power play guru. Well, it's time for you to guru. Because you cannot have that lifeless power play that they had at the end of game one and expect to walk out of that building tonight with a win. And he came on the show last week when we had the Predators playoff preview show. Andrew Burnett came on the show, and I asked him, I said, is there anything you learned from your playoff experience with the Florida Panthers? I believe, Ian, they lost in the first round that year.
I believe that is correct.
They were the President's Trophy winner, and they drew, because you know how it's all screwed
Tampa,
up.
I think.
Right, they drew Tampa. It's all screwed up as far as, well, they could be the fourth best team, but they're a wild card, so you have to play whatever. So because of that, they drew Tampa, and they lost. And Tampa ended up, I believe, in the Cup final that year, but they lost. And I asked Andrew Burnett, I said, is there anything you learned from that? And he said, yeah. He said he learned. But he said he was going to kind of keep those things to himself. But he talked about, in the playoffs, it's different in terms of making changes, making decisions. There's just not time to let things work themselves out. Whereas in the regular season, you have a power play like you did the other night. Okay, well, let's work on it. Let's practice it some. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's just see if, we can get better results doing the same things and it'll work itself out. Can't do that in the playoffs. And so when it comes to learning his lessons, I want to see that the coach has decided, no, we're changing quickly here because we don't have all this time in the playoffs. So I expect to see some changes tonight on the power play, and I expect to see results on the power play because that's his baby. He's the guru. And if you're the guru, then when things aren't going well, I'm looking for you to be the guy that gets everybody out of it. Now, I did think this going into today, where I don't think the Predators played particularly well on Sunday night, and they still could have won the game, but I don't think Vancouver played particularly well either. And I was expecting that Vancouver was going to play better tonight. So it's not so much, well, you just have to play better than you played Sunday. No, you're going to have to play better than you played on Sunday and better than they played on Sunday because they're going to play better tonight. But I do wonder if maybe I walked that back a little bit because of the goalie situation. But the power play, the problems with the power play on Sunday night had nothing to do with the goalie. Ty texts in and says, the poor quality shots the Predators got Sunday night, it doesn't matter who was in goal, and it probably would have been the same result, and I don't disagree with that, especially on the power play at the end of the game. When they really could have put it out of reach, and I think ended the game by going on the power play up 2-1 in the third period, and they got nothing out of it. Well, it's time for Andrew Burnett to fix that, because you can't win. We learned this in the Dallas series in 2019. You cannot win if you can't score on the power play, because they're going to score on the power play. And that's the whole point. That's why the Predators brought in Dan Lambert all those years ago, was to fix the power play, because he was a power play guru. And then when they fired the coach, they fired Dan Lambert too, because they were like, well, there's no point of having a power play savant on our coaching staff when our power play guru is our head coach. So while, again, I think Andrew Burnett has exceeded expectations, and I think the big kind of issue that we're going to be determining going forward is whether or not the core guys, Yossi, Forsberg, Saros, whether or not you can win in the playoffs with them. And that's going to be about them and not Burnett. The power play tonight and getting that right so you can win game 2, that's on Burnett. He's got to get that figured out. 615-737-1025. Barry Trotz will join us at 5 o'clock today ahead of tonight's game against Vancouver. But coming up next, we have another mock draft simulation to go over as far as the Titans are concerned. And this one puts the Titans in a scenario that we have not discussed yet. We'll do that next here on Stillman & Company. Let's talk about FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app, and the NBA playoffs gives you a great opportunity to win. That's right, because the road to the final starts now, and new customers on FanDuel can go and own their playoff run with $150. Just place any $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, to use during these NBA playoffs. Get 3-pointers made in a game, over, under point totals, first basket score, and more. They have so many different bet types that you can choose from. I mean, really, there's nothing that I could hammer down, especially with all the games they've got going on. So go to FanDuel.com/JGM to get started. That's FanDuel.com/JGM. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, and, of course, my official sportsbook app. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. First online real money wager, only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issue is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Trevor is in less than 30 minutes. Barry Trotz in an hour. And I promised we'd be doing 2 mock draft simulations a day leading up to Thursday. So we've already had the first one, which netted us a trade. We traded out of Malik Neighbors, but we got Brock Bowers and a bunch of picks. Well, it's time to put the Titans back on the clock.
It's time for a random Jared Stillman mock draft simulation, courtesy of the Pro Football Focus Mock Draft Simulator.
Okay, the mock draft simulations again. I'm the Titans. Everybody else is the simulation. And again, it's 7-38. That's where we start. We have no idea what's going to happen Thursday night. We're trying to get a vibe. Okay, if this happens, then what do you do? And that takes us to the number 1 pick and the Chicago Bears. Chicago takes Caleb Williams. By the way, that's the one constant in all of this. Caleb Williams has gone first every time. Washington at 2. Drake May. New England at 3. Malik Neighbors. Arizona at 4. Roma Dunze. We've seen this a couple times now. You know, we had one where the Titans took Marvin Jr. The Chargers at 5. Joe Alt. So now he's off the board. The Giants at 6. Marvin Harrison Jr., which means the Titans are on the clock at 7, and here's the question. Jaden Daniels or Will Levis? The elite players that are still available at this point are Daniels, Brock Bowers, and Dallas Turner. The Jets at 10 want to trade. But the best I can do, they don't have a second this year. The best I can do is ask for next year's first, and they won't do it. So even for Jaden Daniels, they won't trade next year's first. New England at 34 calls and wants to trade. And the package that they're willing to offer is 34, 68, 103. They're 1 next year, and they're 2 next year. Now, remember, their 1 next year could easily be number 1 overall. And so their 2 next year could also be 33. But I'm not picking until 34 if I make that trade. Ian, would you make the trade? Would you trade all the way back to 34, but you're picking up a 1 next year? You're also picking up 68, which is a 3rd-round pick, and you're picking up 103, which is a 4th-round pick, but you're getting New England's 1 and 2 next year. Would you do that, or would you rather pick earlier in this draft?
1 and 2 next year, huh?
Yep.
All the way back to 34? I don't know. I think I need to take a pick. I think I want to take a player.
Okay. So then I asked New England what they would take for Will Levis. The first thing I did was I talked to my area scout who's been following Jaden Daniels, has been scouting Jaden Daniels. You want to take a guess who my area scout was, Ian?
Who's that?
I texted Caroline.
Okay.
And I said, Jaden Daniels or Will Levis? And she said Jaden Daniels.
Uh-huh.
And I got to be honest with you, I think there's probably a lot of people out there that if you said Jaden Daniels or Will Levis, they would say Jaden Daniels. Just straight up with nothing else attached to it. Daniels or Levis, who would you rather have? I think a lot of people would say Jaden Daniels. I asked New England, what would you want for Will Levis? Now, look, I don't know if New England would do this or not, but that's their business, not mine. And the Pro Football Focus simulator says they'll do this. 34 in their first rounder next year. And New England accepts the trade. So I'm on the clock, and I'm trading Will Levis for 34 in New England's first next year, and Tennessee, now on the clock, makes the pick. Jaden Daniels, quarterback, LSU. Now, some of this might be contingent on there being a buyer for Levis, but I actually think there will be a buyer for Levis more than you think, simply because the quarterback market after you get past the first 3 or 4 guys is not great. And on top of it, next year's quarterback class apparently stinks. So now I'm on the clock at 34. And the best available player is Brian Thomas Jr., who I thought would be going 18 or 14 or something like that. But every year there's a guy who slides all the way back. Brian Thomas Jr. is available. Jordan Morgan's available. Chop Robinson, the pass rusher out of Penn State's available. Keon Coleman's available. So there are a lot of guys there. And look, I need a left tackle because I wasn't able to get Joe Alt, and I drafted a quarterback. And I got 34 and I got 38. So at 34, this pick is too good to pass up. I had to make it. Tennessee drafts Brian Thomas Jr., the wide receiver out of LSU. It only makes sense. You know, I've got the LSU receiver. I've got the LSU quarterback. Again, I don't think this is going to happen, but we are going to be wowed Thursday by what goes down. And so with New England's 34th pick, Brian Thomas is there. To me, that's a no-brainer. Now, I still really want Jordan Morgan. I need my left tackle. He's on the board, and there's 36 and 37 before I pick at 38. So I pick up the phone and I call Washington. And I offer 38 and Traylon Burks to Washington for 35. Let's see if Washington wants Burks. What's the value of Burks? A 4th-round pick, 5th-round pick? So will you make that move, 38 for Burks to get to 35? And I don't need Burks anymore because I just drafted Brian Thomas Jr. They accept, which makes it very easy. Now I'm on the clock. Out of Arizona. So in this particular mock draft scenario, I drafted Jaden Daniels, 7th overall out of LSU. I traded Will Levis to the Patriots for 34 in their first rounder next year. I drafted Brian Thomas Jr. at 34. I traded 38 in Traylon Burks for 35, and I drafted Jordan Morgan, the left tackle out of Arizona, with the 35th pick. Now, some people are going to hate this. And if you're going to hate it, it's because you love Will Levis. It's because you're somebody last week that when we brought up the what do you do if Drake May falls, everybody's like, oh, Jared Levis is a franchise guy. Why would you turn your back on your franchise guy? But because these guys might be better. So I crunched numbers. Age, when comparing the two, Levis versus Jaden Daniels. Age, this coming season, Daniels will be 23, Levis will be 25. Check mark to Daniels. The contract. Levis has 3 years remaining. Jaden Daniels is 4 plus that 5th-year option. Check mark to Daniels. The offense with which they run, and this is kind of the big question here, because Brian Callahan runs that West Coast offense, which is what Will Levis plays at quarterback. Played it at Kentucky and played it well that first year under Liam Cohen. Jaden Daniels runs a spread. So if you draft Jaden Daniels and trade Will Levis, then either Jaden Daniels has to run your offense or you have to change your offense to fit Jaden Daniels. And I think you're an idiot if you don't change your offense to fit Jaden Daniels. So that check mark goes to Levis. The last 2 years, Levis was a 2-year starter after a transfer at Kentucky. Daniels was a 2-year starter after a transfer at LSU. The last 2 years, Levis threw for 43 touchdowns. Daniels threw for 57. Check mark to Jaden Daniels. Interceptions the last 2 years in the SEC. Levis threw for 23. Daniels threw for 7. Check mark to Jaden Daniels. Completion percentage last season, Levis was 65.4. Their last year in college, 65.4. Daniels, 72.2. The check mark goes to Jaden Daniels. And then finally, I wanted to see the comps that Dane Brugler in his mock drafts in the Beast, his guides, the comps that Dane Brugler has for these two players. And as far as Will Levis was concerned in his 2023 Beast, he compared him to Carson Wentz and said that he's got the good and the bad of Carson Wentz. And as I've said many times, I can see it going either way. The comp for Daniels, and I have heard this from Rick Spielman, and I saw this in Bruce Feldman's article today in The Athletic, but Dane Brugler's comp is Lamar Jackson. Who would you rather have, Lamar Jackson or Carson Wentz? So to me, I went BPA at 7, even though it does change everything the organization has already started doing to make this move. You can't turn down a potential star quarterback, and it looks like Jaden Daniels has the makings of a potential star quarterback. So I'm taking Jaden Daniels at 7, and I'm trading Will Levis. So again, in this mock scenario, I now have 7, 34, 35, 106, 146, 182, 242, 252, and New England's first next year, but I no longer have Will Levis or Treylon Burks. I think I can live with that. Ian, what do you think? Daniels over Levis there?
That would be wild.
Now, the thing that, again, is the most important part here, or I should say the part that, I don't think Daniels is going to be there at 7. I also don't think New England's going to give up 34 and their first for Levis next year. But I can't control the mock draft simulator. The simulator is what it is, just like I can't control what decisions New England decides they want to make on Thursday night. So that's our fourth one. The Levis versus Jaden Daniels debate. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. I do want your reaction to that decision that I made, and we'll do that next ahead of Trevor. Let's talk about Window Nation. April is here. And you got to talk to my friends at Window Nation, because if your windows won't open for fresh air or seal tight to keep out pollen and bugs, talk to Window Nation today. Because right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free. Thus, there's no limit on how much you could save. Plus, save even more with no interest or payments for 24 months. Again, for every 2 windows you buy, you'll get 2 windows free with no interest and no payments for 2 years. That's 24 months. With proven quality, you'll get affordable windows that meet or beat the national brands. So do not miss out. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com to schedule your free in-home estimate. That's 866-90-NATION, windownation.com.
how do team needs affect how you look at the draft board?
They don't affect the board at all. The board is set up according to NFL standards. And so in theory, now this would never happen, but in theory you're saying if our board has 4 7-0s on it, then all the boards across the league will have 4 7-0s on them. Now we know that won't be the case. But generally your board is set up according to the league simply because, as we all know, if you are putting a middle linebacker, you're giving him a grade of 5.5, and then you start talking about it, you go, you know what, we really need a linebacker. Then all of a sudden he's a 5.9, and then, somebody else comes in, the linebacker coach says, you know what, I don't have any linebacker. Whoop, now all of a sudden he's a 6.5, and he keeps moving up the board, when in reality he's still 5.5. So in the first round, you go out and you draft a guy because you need him that is a third-round player in the first round. Well, that's the cardinal sin of drafting. You just can't do that.
Hey, I was a GM back in the day saying, look, man, you can't be drafting for need now. Like, you cannot, we really need with this. You got to roll with the board. And Rand Carthon said something similar today about how, their board is stacked vertically and horizontally, meaning, hey, like we got guys over here, guys over there. So if Alt and Daniels are the same, but again, Alt's off the board. And in our latest mock draft simulation, the Titans make the pick of Jaden Daniels at 7 overall. And I do want your reaction on this. The one thing I will say is there will be a sentiment that if you were to make the pick of Jaden Daniels and trade Will Levis, well, nobody will want Will Levis, and I don't agree with that. And I will tell you why I don't agree with that. Because after Jaden Daniels goes off the board, there's one more quarterback, one more young quarterback, and it's J.J. McCarthy. Then there's a drop, supposedly, and then there's Penix and Bo Nix. And there is supposedly nobody in next year's draft. I'm hearing it's the 22 draft all over again. So if you're Sean Payton with the Broncos, you have the choice of either using the 12th pick on J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix or somebody like that, or turning around and using picks in next year's draft to trade for Levis. In this case, because New England passed on a quarterback and went Malik Neighbors at number 3, they need a quarterback. So when they called with me on the board at 7, I said, well, I'm going to take Jaden Daniels, but would you be interested in Will Levis? Because at 34, you're not getting J.J. McCarthy, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get Michael Penix. So now you're Gerard Mayo and Elliott Wolf, and you're saying, all right, either we make the trade for Levis or we have no quarterback this year, and even though we'll suck with no quarterback, we might not get a quarterback next year. You can't do that. You'll be fired. The owner won't be, but you will. So I think there will be somebody who will pay something for Levis. I don't think you'll get a first for him for next year, even though that's what we got. But I wouldn't be surprised if you were able to get a second rounder in next year's draft for Will Levis if one of the quarterbacks fell and you were convinced that, again, the comp for Jaden Daniels is Lamar Jackson. If you're convinced that he's the next Lamar Jackson and you can coach him up, then you make the trade. Phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Kyle has been waiting patiently and is up next here on the program. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, Kyle.
Hey, Jared. I'm leaning towards Will Levis on this no matter what. But other than that, Jaden Daniels, he gives me Marcus Mariota vibes more than I'm getting a Lamar Jackson sense. That's a 2-time MVP. That's some high praise for anybody to drop that on him. But he takes some hard hits. He gets, those NFL hits, the ones he took in college, he's done. We're picking him up off the field. So, and he had 2 first-round receivers he's throwing to. I know you got him in the second round, 34, but in my opinion, those are 2 first-rounders and NFL talent all around them. So what do you think? So
I like Jaden Daniels, and I appreciate your call. I like Jaden Daniels. I don't love him. I would take Drake May over Jaden Daniels, but if I think Washington will take May, but I could see, Kingsbury'd rather have Daniels because, he can run the Kyler Murray offense with Daniels, and I think Daniels is better than Kyler Murray. And is going to be better than Kyler Murray. I think Jaden Daniels is pretty good. Now, I'm not in love with him, but again, that's the whole point of having the scouting staff, right? Like, Caroline knows everything there is to know about Jaden Daniels, right? So when I asked her, Daniels or Levis, she, without hesitation, said Daniels. I'm like, okay. I think we got to stop doing, what we have to stop doing is we have to stop overrating Will Levis. Levis is a fine quarterback prospect. He won't be a bum. That we know. We learned that from last year. He will not be as bad as Malik, who will probably never be good enough to play quarterback consistently in the NFL. But I don't know if 2 years from now if Will Levis is a starting quarterback or not. The first time I ever watched Sam Howell play an NFL game, I was watching the tape of him quarterbacking Washington at the end of the 22 season, the last game. And I'm like, I see some Will Levis in Sam Howell. Sam Howell got a year as a starter, lit up the scoreboard, didn't win any games, threw for a bunch of yards last year, and now he's a backup. And that could be Levis. I don't know. When I got the Rick Spielmans of the world saying that, hey, Jaden Daniels' comp is Lamar Jackson, like, I am, okay, now we have to talk about, are you turning around the next Lamar Jackson? And it's easy, well, I don't think he's Lamar Jackson. Okay, well, you don't, but they do. And they got the credentials. One texter says, nobody wants those players. The same reasons that you don't want them, they just don't want them too. And I don't know who he's talking about. If he's talking about Jaden Daniels, I would say this. Nobody wanted Aaron Rodgers. And we saw how that worked out. One texter says, the next Lamar Jackson can't win in the playoffs, much less the Super Bowl. No, thank you, says the texter. Now, look, I don't think Lamar Jackson can win the Super Bowl. That being said, Ian, who would you rather have, Lamar Jackson or Will Levis?
Lamar.
It's not close. It's not close. I don't think you can win a Super Bowl with Lamar. I'm one of those people, and I'm a Lamar fan because of where Lamar went to college. But I don't think I think for the problem with Lamar Jackson is I feel like when it comes to Lamar, throughout the AFC playoffs, he'll have to win, at least 2 games against elite quarterbacks. And I can see him beating Josh Allen once, or Joe Burrow once, or Mahomes once, or C.J. Stroud once, or Aaron Rodgers once. But I can't see him doing it twice. And I can't see him, if he doesn't get the first seed, I can't see him doing it 3 times. Ryan Tannehill, for instance, he beat Tom Brady once in the playoffs, and he beat Lamar Jackson once in the playoffs, but then he got Mahomes. Now, I don't know if Tannehill can win those 3 games. And I don't think Lamar can win those 3 games. But Lamar can get as close as you can without winning those 3 games. Levis, we don't even know if Levis is going to be a starter. And I'm not saying that Daniels is Lamar. But I'm saying that's the kind of talent they say Jaden Daniels has. One texter says, like the last mock, I am torn. I get what you're doing, but the chemistry of the top players they already have with Levis. I understand it's a new regime, and they probably won't care about what the wide receivers think ultimately, but you are starting over again in a matter of months. Yes, but the context of the situation changes it. I understand the idea of, we don't want to start over again. I understand. Makes plenty of sense to me. But we're talking about starting over to acquire what could be a transcendent player. Somebody texted in yesterday and asked if there had ever been a team that had used a top 50 draft pick on a quarterback and they turned around and drafted a quarterback the next year. Now, in both cases, off the top of my head, they were for the number 1 pick. Cam Newton after Jimmy Clausen had been drafted, and Kyler Murray after Josh Rosen had been drafted. I'm sure there's another scenario out there, but I can't think of it. Well, Jaden Daniels, again, I read the Bruce Feldman article where he talked to coaches and offensive coordinators and QB coaches, and, there were a couple that said they might like Jaden Daniels more than Caleb Williams. So if we're talking that kind of talent, number 1 pick potential talent, well, is Will Levis that much different than Jimmy Clausen? I would take the super talented quarterback. Trevor will join us coming up next as, again, we get Trevor's thoughts on kind of the latest as far as all the kind of draft boards are shaping up, what we heard from the Titans today. We'll do that next with Trevor. Stillman and Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, we have news, by the way, to share with everybody. Tomorrow, 4 o'clock, Joe Alt will join the Stillman and Company program. And trust me, we've got questions for the Notre Dame left tackle, but all the arrows are pointing to Joe Alt and the Titans. I'm going to ask him when he comes on the show. I'm going to say, how much do you think you're going to be a Tennessee Titan? Just be honest with us. But Joe Alt will join us tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Meanwhile, Trevor Maddich joins us as he always does, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook and Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. So, Trevor, I've been doing all these mock draft simulations. Some Alt go ahead of the Titans. Sometimes they don't. Are we at the point where it just makes too much sense? The teams in front of the Titans all have bigger needs at quarterback and receiver. The Titans will be on the clock at 7, and it just makes too much sense, Joe Alt being a Tennessee Titan, and that it should lack drama on Thursday. What do you think?
It almost feels like, Jared, if they don't take Joe Alt, there's just too much drama, too much of a hot mess to have to deal with. And after all the run up to the draft and all the possibilities not named Joe Alt, it feels like just take Joe Alt and spare us of this misery. Now, having said that, if it is Joe Alt, I don't care who else is there. It won't bother me at all. What will start to get crazy is if they start to get trade offers, because now good chance they won't get Alt, although they still might be able to do it. And then everything hits the fan.
So, I've been doing these mock draft simulations, and sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. To your point, I mean, some of these trade offers are pretty nice. In one of the mock draft simulations, I traded away the pick that could have been Malik Neighbors in order to acquire the 13th pick and the 44th pick and the Raiders, who I'm trading with, their second rounder next year. Is the drop-off, because at 13, I lose Neighbors. I ended up with Bowers in that scenario. But at 13, for instance, picking up an extra second, picking up a second next year, or whatever else the Titans could acquire there, Trevor, is that worth, in your opinion, the drop-off from Alt to Fashanu, Alt to Bowers, Alt to Turner? Is that worth the drop-off to pick up those extra picks?
If they get Bowers in doing that, then I think, yeah, because Bowers is a top 7, top 8 talent. Yep. And if they're able to get him outside the top 10, I kind of think you got to do it. I think Olu Fashanu, the left tackle from Penn State, is the only other guy that I'm really confident in at left tackle for the Titans besides Joe Alt. Everybody else has got issues to deal with that I think would be harder for them to fix than it will be for Fashanu to fix the things that he has to deal with in terms of his footwork and things like that. So they are taking a risk of not getting the left tackle production that they want if they don't take Alt and if they trade back. But at the same time, if they end up with a huge playmaker like a Brock Bowers back there, even if they take a guy like a Malik Neighbors at number 7, if he falls to that point, then you've got a situation that it's hard to be mad at them anyway. Now, I think I would be critical if Neighbors and Alt were there at 7 and they took Neighbors instead of Alt. But at the same time, Neighbors projects to be a generational talent. We'll see if he's able to get it done, because wide receivers typically have a higher bust rate in the first round than offensive linemen do. But when you talk about moving out, trading back, yeah, if Brock Bowers is there at 13 or a place like that, take him. If Olu Fashanu at left tackle is there at 13 or so, yeah, I'm fine with taking him too. If those guys are gone, now I think you've better be really smart with the picks that you gained by trading out.
So to your point on Malik Neighbors, Bruce Feldman had a great piece today in The Athletic where he talked to wide receiver coaches and offensive assistant coaches and talent evaluators across the NFL. And the unnamed guys, a lot of them said Malik Neighbors over Marvin Harrison Jr. Rick Spielman has echoed a similar sentiment where Marvin Harrison's lack of activity during the pre-draft process has led him, I think, to favor Neighbors over Harrison. Do you subscribe to the same line of thinking?
First of all, those guys I have a lot of respect for. And so I'm not going to sit here and say that they're wrong. I can say that I see it differently.
Okay.
I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't do a whole lot in the pre-draft process because he didn't have to. And it doesn't bother me. I think he's got plenty of tape that shows that he should be a top 4 pick or so, certainly one of the top 2 receivers, along with potentially Malik with Neighbors. There's a couple things that bother me about Neighbors, about saying that he's going to be a lock, that he's going to be Jamar Chase. He's going to be that guy. He might be that guy. He certainly has the speed to be that guy. He had the college production, both inside at the slot and outside at wide receiver, especially using his speed to get downfield, that you would say, yeah, this guy is going to be a generational downfield playmaker. And chances are good that he'll be that guy. But at the same time, he didn't show a whole lot of route running prowess, of route running detail that I thought he could have, especially on the shorter and intermediate routes. He just used his speed to scare college corners. And in doing so, he would telegraph a lot of those underneath routes. Now, if you're not very fast, it doesn't matter what you telegraph, because you can telegraph it and then you can just take off down the field, and the cover guy has to respect that deep threat, and he's going to let you do what you want to do underneath. But in the NFL, guys are going to study your body language. They're going to understand what you do and jump on your routes, because you're going to tell them what the route is before you even make the break. And you might not even know you're doing it. And so things like this for Malik Neighbors, he'll have to clean up in order to be able to be that lock great player in the NFL. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is a bigger guy who's got a better ability to beat the press, and then a better ability to win with routes right now. Neighbors is faster, but Harrison is bigger, and I think he's a better route runner right now than Neighbors. Now, does that mean he still will be in 5 years? I don't know the answer to that. I do know that Neighbors did not take the opportunity at LSU to clean that stuff up and show that he wants to be a precise route runner.
Trevor Maddox is our guest, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters, and ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Rick Spielman, the former Vikings general manager today, used A.J. Brown as a comp for Roma Dunze, the wide receiver at Washington. Do you see that when you watch Roma Dunze?
I can see that in this regard. Both Brown and Dunze are beasts when the ball is on the way down. You know, we always talk about how, Jared, I hate it when receivers wait to receive the ball. And if the defender is there to interrupt it, well, you know, I'm just going to receive it. And if it comes in, I'll try to receive it. No, you don't receive the ball. You fight for the ball. It's your ball. You're a junkyard dog going after the last bone in the yard. And when that ball's coming down, you don't receive it. You attack it. A.J. Brown is that kind of player. And so is Roma Dunze. Now, I believe, I don't know exactly how tall A.J. is, but Roma Dunze is like 6'3". He's a really tall guy. Still runs fast enough to stretch the field. But when that ball's coming down, man, it's his ball. And so I can see that comparison with A.J. Brown.
Trevor, what do you make of Dallas Turner? You know, we see him as kind of the first defensive player a lot of people say are coming off the board. How does he compare to Will Anderson from last year? And do you see Dallas Turner becoming a star pass rusher? You know, and I'm not saying in the mold of a J.J. Watt or a Micah Parsons, because they're both incredibly different players, and they're different players from Turner, but in terms of their ability to get to the quarterback.
I think that Will Anderson's game coming out of Alabama, it was much more precise. I think there was more skill demonstrated in Will Anderson's game. The thing about Dallas Turner is that he's got tremendous athletic ability. I mean, the guy is 6'3", 247, and his 40 at the combine was in the mid 4.4s. So he had wide receiver speed, carrying 247 pounds, and you could see that in his pass rush, man. That first step was electric. It was incredible. And when he got to the top of his rush, he could turn that corner and accelerate to the quarterback. The worry that I have is that if that didn't work, he wasn't doing a whole lot of other stuff in between that first step and turning the corner to accelerate to the quarterback. And if the tackle took a good set and got his hands on him, Turner didn't do a whole lot. So I don't know if he just doesn't or he can't. I do know that Will Anderson in college was very active with moves and counter moves. You don't see that as much on the tape with Dallas Turner. Now, having that size and speed combination, the explosiveness combination, I'm sure NFL coaches will say, yeah, we're going to teach him how to do that stuff. And I imagine he'll learn how to do it. But he's kind of starting from scratch when it comes to winning with technique because he's always been able to win with speed. Now, can't coach speed. I get that. But at the same time, he was coached by one of the best defensive staffs in Alabama in all of college football. He watched Will Anderson, saw what Will Anderson did, saw how Will Anderson did it, and did not duplicate it. So he deserves to be a top 10 pick, Dallas Turner, from a standpoint of pure natural talent and potential. But I want to see more from him in terms of the skill set of executing the techniques and the counters that a successful pass rusher in the NFL will need.
Trevor Maddich is with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics and ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Coming up next, there's one name when I do these Pro Football Focus mock draft simulations that keeps coming up around 38. And I want Trevor's thoughts on that, especially considering something Brian Callahan said today. We'll do that coming up next here on the program. Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home. They could do the exact same thing for you. They've taken care of my home ever since I've become a homeowner, which was 6 years ago. And I've never had an issue with Hiller. They are fabulous. Smile and save this month with Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, because from now until April 30th, you can take advantage of big savings on your home systems. Enjoy up to $1,500 off select new HVAC systems, whole home water filtration and descalers, or select new whole home generators. And if you've been waiting for the right time to upgrade or replace your systems, now is the time to do it. So visit happyhiller.com today for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
are you guys on the depth of O-line versus wide receiver? Both of you, where are you on it?
In the draft class, or on our team?
Draft class.
I mean, just from my point of view, it's a bunch of good players. You know, there's it's probably more offensive linemen than there's been in past classes. I mean, this feels deep in terms of the talent that's available. And the same thing with the receivers. I think the receiver classes are pretty similar these days, where you're going to have a handful of high-end talent that's probably going to go in the higher parts of the rounds, and there's going to be some depth in the class that's got a lot of different options for what you're looking for in a receiver. So that part's been it's been consistent, I think, with previous years, but you're always going to find depth in the receiver classes. I think overall, there's always going to be good players available, and then this, I think, is a pretty strong offensive line class. I think we'll see where it all shakes out, but evaluation-wise, there's some really good players there.
That was Brian Callahan today talking about the offensive line class. Trevor Maddich is with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics and ESPN Bet Sportsbook. So, Trevor, as I've been doing these Pro Football Focus mock draft simulations, I find tackles that most people say are first-round talents available at 38. For instance, Jordan Morgan, the left tackle out of Arizona, has been available multiple times for me to be able to take at 38. Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma has gotten there a couple times as well. So I ask this question to you. Is there any chance, given the depth, and you heard Brian Callahan talk about it right there, is there any chance the Titans could feel comfortable taking a Neighbors, a Bowers, a Harrison, that kind of player, and getting the left tackle, whether it's Jordan Morgan, Tyler Guyton, Patrick Paul, whomever, at 38 in this particular class?
At 38, they'll get a guy that they can develop into a left tackle, but there will be a lot more work to do. Like you mentioned, Jordan Morgan, for example, tackle out of University of Arizona. A lot of people have him projected as a first-round pick. So if he's there at 38, and if the Titans have that projection on him, well, hey, they'd be getting a steal in the top part of the second round to pick him up. But here's what they'll need to look at from a standpoint of coaching him up. First of all, he doesn't have very long arms. His arms are about 33 inches long. So people that are concerned about length, he's not a guy with great length. So he's got to use his hands really well. And he doesn't punch with the accuracy that he could. He's got active hands, but they're not necessarily his best feature. His best feature are his feet. And that's important because when a defensive pass rusher defeats the hands of a pass blocker, the way the pass blocker fixes that first is with his feet. He's got to stay in front of that pass rusher while he resets his hands. And Morgan can do that. Here's the biggest problem when you watch him on tape. He tends to stop his feet when he punches. And that happens to a lot of college tackles where they'll get a really good punch in, but boy, his feet stop when they do it. And if the defensive end is still running, still flipping his hips around the corner, when the tackle stops his feet momentarily to get that great punch in, then it's over. And so can Morgan learn to keep his feet moving while he punches? If he can learn that, then yeah, he can develop into a good starter at left tackle. If he can't get past that hump, then he's in trouble. And the answer to that is, I don't know if he can do it. We talk about as an example of a guy whose deficiencies in college should be able to be coached right out of him in the NFL. This, what I'm describing, stop your feet when you punch, it's kind of a flinch. And that's harder to coach out of a guy than something like Olu Fashanu, left tackle out of Penn State, who, when he takes a lead step with his right foot on an inside block, he picks it up and puts it down instead of picks it up and stretches out forward and gains 6 inches on his lead step. That's easy to do because that occurs before contact with the opponent. What I'm talking about now with Morgan occurs at the contact with the opponent, and that's much harder to clean up. Can he do it? Sure, but that's the risk that the Titans will take if they take a guy like him at 38.
Trevor, in my most recent mock draft simulation, Caleb Williams went 1, Drake May went 2, Malik Neighbors went 3 to New England, Roma Dunze 4, Joe Alt 5, Marvin Harrison at 6, which put me on the clock at 7 with Jaden Daniels, Brock Bowers, and Dallas Turner available to me. The Jets at 10 wanted to move out, but they wouldn't give me enough. Then the only other team that wanted it was 34 at New England. I took Jaden Daniels. In that scenario, if you're not getting full value from the Jets there for that pick, would you take Jaden Daniels and trade Will Levis if you were the Titans and put in that spot?
Depends on what I could get for Levis. A lot of people might see Levis as a guy with a lot of people had as a first-round grade, ended up going in the second round to the Titans last year. And now he's got a year of NFL coaching and a year of experience behind a bad offensive line and with almost no one to throw it to. Teams might look at him and say, yeah, given that he's a step ahead of college quarterbacks coming out because of his experience last year, we'll give you a draft pick that'll matter. But that's what really matters, because I'm not certain that Jaden Daniels is going to be a great NFL quarterback either. He might be. I hope he is. He certainly was a great college quarterback, but translating from college to the NFL, there's a couple of things that I think are a bit of a worry. One is that he didn't really show great arm strength from a standpoint of driving the ball into tight windows on intermediate throws and driving the ball on deeper throws with trajectories that require that. He was outstanding at throwing that ball up in the air and hitting receivers running down the field behind the defense. But from a standpoint of arm strength to fit it into a tight window on the sideline at 15, 20 yards down the field, I didn't see him do a whole lot of that. Now, can he do it? Maybe. Can he, if he can't do that, does he still have enough arm strength to get everything that he needs to do? Probably. But would you take that risk at 7, given the fact that 50-50, you're 50-50 at best in finding a quarterback in the first round in the last 15 years that are going to make it on your team? Probably less than 50-50. And when you look at a guy with some deficiencies that he may not be able to correct, do you really want to take that risk when you could take another position that has a lower bust rate and much more likelihood that he will be on your team contributing 5-10 years from now?
At that point, don't you have to take Bowers? I
think you might, yeah. Bowers or J.C. Latham, I think, at that point. There are a lot of people that have Latham, he's the right tackle out of Alabama, ranked even higher overall than Joe Alt. And I think from an athletic standpoint and just a pure grizzly bear factor, Latham probably is ahead of Alt. Just that Alt is just so polished in so many ways that his ability as a football player is ahead of where Latham is right now. But the things that Latham needs to improve through coaching are things that I believe he can improve. I'm a little concerned about his foot speed, but I think he's going to be able to learn technique from Coach Bill Callahan, the offensive line coach for the Titans, to be able to overcome any deficiencies and become just a mauler of a right tackle. And if Alt's not there and it comes down to you still want to get an offensive lineman, I wouldn't mind taking him either there. But Brock Bowers, I believe, is a generational talent at tight end. He is a generational matchup nightmare. And even though tight end is not a pressing need right now for this team, this is an opportunity to get an absolute playmaker that will be a force multiplier to make other players on this offense a lot better than they are. And if they ended up taking Bowers in that situation, I'd be much happier than if they took a quarterback.
Trevor Maddich, as always, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook and Houston Clinic Orthopedics. Trevor will be with us Thursday night for the draft out at Twin Peaks. Trevor, great stuff as always. We will see you Thursday.
Great. Thanks, Jared.
Yep, Trevor Maddich, a part of our draft night show. And I promise you guys this. I will shut up on Thursday night, let the analysts do the talking, and then we will react together at pick number 7. Barry Trotz joins us next ahead of Game 2 in Vancouver. What's he think about the Thatcher Demko news? He's out. Also, what about the adjustments from Game 1 to Game 2? We'll talk to Barry Trotz about that. Tune into 93.3 Classic Hits today as the Sounds take on the Louisville Bats. Pre-game is at 4:50, first pitch at 5:05. Sounds Baseball on 93.9 Classic Hits, presented by Twin Peaks, Family Leisure, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios ahead of game number 2, Predators and the Vancouver Canucks tonight. Predators down 1-0 in the series. Preds playoff tonight, by the way, in less than an hour. The pregame show is at 8, and the puck drop is at 9. And as always, we are joined on a Tuesday by Predators general manager Barry Trotz. Barry, I want to start with the news of the day, which is Thatcher Demko is reportedly out tonight, maybe the rest of the series. I wonder when that news hit your wire and hit everybody's wire over at the Preds Hotel, what is the reaction, if there is any reaction to that kind of news?
I think, I'm pretty experienced at this. I just think that's part of the attrition that you go through, and nothing surprises you. I mean, you're surprised, all the time when it comes out right before, but nothing really surprises you in the playoffs because it's a little more secretive. Guys, get some big hits during the contest. In this case, it could have been a hit. It could have been, old injury. It could have been, just stretched the wrong way. We don't know what it is. Only Vancouver does, but. You look at it as, okay, there's a good player down, but at the same time, you're going to recognize, I know a lot about Casey DeSmith. He was in Pittsburgh's organization when I was in Washington. He's a quality backup. He's the one thing that Vancouver has is a quality backup in Casey DeSmith. Just as UC Saros goes down, we have a quality one in Lankinen. So you look at it as, hey, they're going to have that next man up mentality. But at the same time, that they're getting a little thinner on the back end. So if we can get to Casey DeSmith tonight, then all of a sudden there might be some doubt in their mind of their goaltending situation. But their team's going to rally around it. I've been on the other side, and you're going to get a great effort from Vancouver, and you're going to get a great effort from us. I think we're going to be a little bit more dialed in, a little more desperate, and I think the little layoff that we had, we haven't been good with layoffs this year, but once we get in a little bit of a rhythm, we tend to be a really good hockey team. So I'm hoping we're starting to get in a rhythm.
I do wonder when you look back at Game 1 and the way that you wanted to play compared to the way you did play and the way you hope to play tonight, how much of this is about your game? Forget about Vancouver. It could be Vancouver. It could be Edmonton. It could be Dallas. It could be Milwaukee. It doesn't matter. How much of when you look at how you played on Sunday night, do you think, this is where our game has to be better?
Yeah, our game has to be better in a few areas. If you look at us, we've been a team that has really done a really good job of being really tight support all over the ice, all 3 zones. I thought we got a little bit away from our systematic play, what I like to call our protocols, our predictables, all those. We got away from that a little bit. We had a little bit of looseness, and because of that, who knows? Maybe that was the difference in the game. But I know that there's another level of that detail that you need in the game. You always hear coaches talk about details. It's amazing how a play can break down when you have the detail of being facing the puck and having real tight support versus turning your back on the puck and then all of a sudden you're 10 feet away and you try to get back in the play and you're a second behind, and that second in hockey he has no play, and it really affects your team. So I think there's a lot of stuff that we can clean up and be better at. There's just a fantastic atmosphere in Vancouver. I've been on the other side. They were jacked up. Vancouver. This is the first playoff series for them, and I think 9 years. I think they might have been in the COVID years in the bubble, but back in the city of Vancouver. So the fans were incredible, and it was loud, and they were jacked up, and they played a real strong game. I thought we handled the first period as good as any team on the road. There wasn't a lot of excitement in the building for them, other than some big hits. but in terms of scoring chances and good looks at our net, they didn't have many. And they got a big save by Demko on Beauvillier right off the start. And, who knows? Maybe that was the play that affected Demko going forward. You just don't know. But I know that both clubs are full of adrenaline, and especially Vancouver because they were at home. So I'm looking forward to tonight. I think I got a different vibe from our team. Just watching them skate this morning and being on the bus, there's a little different vibe. So I'm hoping it's a real positive vibe. And this team has responded all year, so I don't anticipate anything different.
So I would describe my feelings on Sunday night and Monday yesterday as angry about game one because I felt like it was a game that the Predators really could have had, and just knowing what taking game one, when I think we can agree you probably didn't play your best, and if you still could have taken game one without playing your best, it would have been great. Today I'm more kind of mentally focusing towards game two and how, hey, you take tonight, then you've got home ice going back to Bridgestone. But as a leader, whether you're a coach or in this case the GM, how do you channel your disappointment with what happened on Sunday and make sure that that anger or disappointment doesn't drag anybody down going forward into game two?
Well, number one, I think I'm with you. It was a missed opportunity. You're up 2-1. I felt like we really did a good job in the first 8 minutes of that game. They didn't have much. They didn't have many looks. The crowd was getting a little quieter, and then they score. And then that's where those momentum moments, you have to stay in the moment. And especially in the playoffs, you have to stay in the moment. I mean, you look at some of the other series, a lot of times goals are scored right away in back-to-back.
Yep.
Be it, your response after getting scored on, or when you score, your response the next shift. Can you get another one, or do you give up one? So I just felt the last game I look at it as a missed opportunity. And the one thing that I do know is that you can't look back. We cannot get the last game. It's already done. So all your energy, all your focus has to be always looking forward. And, you got to be like a little bit of goldfish, as Ted Lasso would say. And forget about it, and you just worry about the moment. And you have to stay in the moment no matter what happens in the game. And for whatever, we could look at those 12 seconds where they scored their 2 goals. We didn't stay in the moment the next shift, and all of a sudden, you're down a puck and you lose a hockey game. So you saw it in a couple other series around the league. So it's commonplace, and how you deal with that and looking forward is the number one thing. You cannot look back because it is wasted energy. You can't be mad and frustrated. Anybody who knows anything about emotions, those suck positive energy out of you. It makes it harder. So you just got to get excited for tonight's game and leave it all on the line. I think we have another level of commitment in our game, be it shot blocking, desperation, whatever it is. I know we have it in us.
I loved Bruno, Barry. I'm sorry I almost cut you off there, but I loved Bruno after the game because, talking about the game and the 12 seconds and everything else, and he's like, yeah, it's disappointed, but, we brush it off and we move on, and it's hockey. And I know internally he was probably seething about losing the game, and yet, from a standpoint that you just brought up that don't look back, it's almost his job to say, hey, move on, game one's over, forget about it, even though I know if I'm mad about it, I know he's mad about it, Barry.
Yeah, absolutely. But I can tell you as a former coach, if I carry that emotion, into the dressing room when I coached after a loss, you carry that on the bus, you carry it at the team meal, you carry it at all those places. I can change the whole look of a locker room, a whole attitude of a locker room by my own actions. And I think that's what Bruno said. Yeah, there's not one person on our team or in our organization was happy we ended up losing a hockey game. But you have to move on from it. You do, because we're going to need all the good vibes all the way from Nashville to Vancouver, British Columbia tonight the guys are going to need your good thoughts, all that, because you got to lean on each other in the playoffs, and our team has to. And you don't need, someone going off the rails. You don't need someone taking a bad penalty because he can't control his emotions, or he doesn't have the energy because couldn't sleep because he's so mad that they lost the last hockey game. You have to move on, and you have to just restore the energy, restore the focus, and hopefully we've done that.
Barry Trotz is with us, Predators general manager. How much do you guys right now talk about, hey, get this one tonight and we're going back to Bridgestone Arena, and the excitement of being able to kind of steal that home ice advantage tonight if you win, to take it back to Bridgestone, where if you protect your home ice, you could be in a commanding position?
I don't think we talk at all about it. I think every player that's a part of the hockey team knows that. I mean, it's, you have to, they've been in, different areas. You hear it on TV, you hear it, all that. So there's not a lot to talk about that. All it is making sure that there's certain things that we have to do on the ice have to happen tonight. We got a new goaltender. That's a little surprise. So there might have to be a little bit of a longer pre-scout on him for our players. But let's get to him early. Let's manage the puck, especially early in the game. They're going to be usually the home teams come out flying, and they want to get to you early. And if they do get to you early, how do you respond? How do you mitigate the damage of being down a goal? Do you worry about it, or you just stay focused? What I've learned over time is the teams that can stay in the fight the longest generally win, and they don't. They start getting comfortable when it's uncomfortable. They stay in the fight. They don't panic, and they stay connected. And teams that can't do that, they become disconnected, and they can become frustrated, and then they usually don't win. So we want to avoid all those at all costs. So we, hopefully our experienced guys will relay that. Some guys who maybe didn't have have a little bit of shock and awe in the first game, they're sort of ready for it a little bit more, and they can perform at a better level. So there's so many circumstances, and who knows what's going to happen. It's sort of what the season is. As I said to you, Jared, just you got to enjoy the ride, and you got to love it, because you don't know what's going to happen. 1 minute you're over the top, next minute you're lower than a snake's belly. So that's the playoffs. That's what makes it so great. So I know our team's ready. Bruno's prepared them. Our coaching staff's prepared them, and it's really up to the players today. And I think I love our group, and they're going to leave it on the line.
I always have the difference between what I hope for and what I expect. And I will say this: I expect that Andrew Burnett is going to get the power play right tonight. That whatever happened, where all of a sudden you guys score on the power play, then you have a power play where you're in their zone for pretty much the entire power play, and then you can't even enter the zone, later on with some adjustments they made. I know there are a lot of reasons why you hired Andrew Burnett, but I know that when you hired him, you talked about this being the best power play coach in the NHL. How much work do you think that goes into that Bruno has put into fixing the power play, or maybe adjusting to the adjustment that Vancouver made the other night?
Well, I think he's done a lot. I mean, they spent a lot of hours. I sat in on the morning meetings, but the game, they're going to make an adjustment that we're not used to. A good example, their first power play last game, and I had sat in on some of the power play meetings, and it usually runs with Miller coming downhill on his natural side, making plays and trying to, he's got 3 or 4 or 5 options that he usually goes with. Their first power play in the game, Miller was on the other side, and Besser, who's usually in the middle, was in a shooting position, which they haven't done all year. So they tried to catch us off guard on the first power play, and then readjusted in the second. So that's the chess match. So, but at certain times, they could be really aggressive where we're expecting them to, do a lot of the same things that they did last game. They may come very, very aggressive up ice. We just don't know. So the players, once they're giving, there'll be adjustments, but at the same time, Vancouver's probably going to throw an adjustment or two in there as well, which could disrupt your flow or your thought process. So that's the great thing about playoffs. It's those little chess match moves that each coach makes, and not only makes, but the players have to make those adjustments. If they don't, then it won't work. So I know adjustments have been made, but it's really on the execution of the players.
Last one for you. Barry Trotz is with us. As a general manager, as a talent evaluator, how much are you watching this series, and maybe if it goes beyond the series, and analyzing guys with the mindset of, okay, I know what you can do in the regular season, but now I'm evaluating how much I can believe in you or expect from you when it really gets tough in the playoffs?
Absolutely. I think this is if you're a player, this is the most important time of the year to create your own legacy within or not only a legacy, but also a perception of what you are. There's guys that have, I look at a player like Claude Lemieux, who, if you look at his stats during the regular season, I mean, they were pretty pedestrian and maybe, a decent NHLer. But when it came to the playoffs, this guy was a game changer in some ways, and always up for, the playoff MVP. He disrupted the other team in such a way that really just threw them right off their rhythm. So there's guys that have made a reputation in their whole career and had long careers because of what they did in the playoffs, not necessarily what they do in the regular season. So I look at this team, and we've talked about it all year. We're good as a group. Individually, we're probably not as talented in some areas as some of the other teams, but this team plays well together. But, we've got a long ways to go at the same time if we're going to, go down this path. But, it's a good start for us because this is how you can filter out your keepers, the guys that you really want to keep long term. And it separates the guys that you go, you know what, I don't think you can do it. So, maybe we have to go in a different direction in the next year or so. So it's a really important time for a player, and it's an important time for your organization.
Barry Trotz. Barry, good luck tonight. We look forward to seeing you back on Friday at Bridgestone Arena. And good luck enjoying the next 3.5 hours or so. I cannot imagine what the anxiety must be like waiting for a game that you're not playing in and you're not coaching in for the next 2.5 hours or 3.5 hours or so. But good luck killing the time.
Well, thank you. Thank God we're out on the West Coast, because at least I can maybe watch a earlier game to get my mind off it. So looking forward to getting back to Nashville. We got the best fans. They're incredibly loud. I know Vancouver did a really good job. We're going to do better when we get home. So with our fans, and hopefully we come back with turn this into the best of a 5.
Sounds good. Barry, good luck.
Thank you.
Yep, Barry Trotz joining us on the program. Now, let me just say this to what he just said. I cannot do that. So if my team is about to play a playoff game, I cannot watch the playoff game that precedes it. Like if the Titans are kicking off at 6 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock at night in a playoff game, and there's a 3:30 game that comes on before it, I cannot watch it or focus on it or think about it or anything like that. So if I was, and I feel the same way about hockey. I'm not going to be able to watch any of these games that come on before the Predators. So Barry just said something at the very, 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 very end of that interview that I want to touch on. We'll do that next. 615-737-1025. Always glad to have Barry on the program. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 The Game.
when you go back and watch game one, do you think Forsberg was maybe pressing a little bit? And how do you get more out of that top line? I think they had 3 shots on goal total, 5-on-5.
Yeah, I thought we were, maybe a little rusty, maybe a little out of sync. When things are going to happen extra fast in the playoffs, and I thought we were a little bit slow with our puck play, our support, and when you give a team like Vancouver a little bit of space and a little bit of time, it's hard for us, and that's meaning even on the breakouts. We had a hard time there with our pressure, and we were just a little bit slow twitch in a few things, and it gave us a little bit of hard time getting our rhythm of our game.
There you go. That was Andrew Burnett talking about, hey, got to get the rhythm, got to this, got to that. I don't care about any of that. I know he does. That's his job. Here's what I'll say. I asked Barry Trotz the last question I asked him. I said, as a talent evaluator, as a GM, do you sit up there in these kind of games and start to say, okay, this is somebody who I can believe in and this is somebody that I can't? And at the end of his answer, he said, this is where he decides whether or not somebody's a keeper or somebody's not. Somebody I can win with or somebody I can't, right? It's like quarterbacks in the NFL. Can you win a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson? Because every time Lamar gets into those big playoff matchups, he doesn't win. And eventually, the book's going to be written, but it looks like most people would probably say you can't win a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson as a quarterback. But you got to just keep going and seeing, and if it's possible, and then once it happens, it happens. So for the Predators, I brought up when I was talking about the power play how I expect Andrew Burnett to fix it. And I told Barry, I said, there's a difference between hoping and expecting. I don't expect the Preds' top players, Forsberg, Josi, and Saros, who I thought were very underwhelming in Game 1. I do not expect them to dominate and take over and deliver Game 2. But I hope they do. We always want the answer to things, right? You draft this guy. Is he going to be a star? And the GM used to always say, I don't know. And I used to look at him and I said, what do you mean you don't know? You're the GM. You should know. But it's like a doctor. Is this medication going to work? I don't know. I think it will. But the doctor doesn't know. So when it comes to Forsberg and Josi and Saros and the guys that have been the core of this team for the last handful of years, for a team that's done a lot of losing in the playoffs, I don't know if these guys can carry teams to victory in the playoffs. I don't know. I hope they can, but I am really starting to lean the other way on this. I'm starting to think, Josi can be the good back end of a defense, can be the leader of a defense on a team that's got star forwards, and you can win. But can you win with Josi as the star of your team? I don't know. Right? Could the Pittsburgh Penguins have won the Cup with just Chris Letang as their star? You know the answer to that. When it comes to Forsberg, again, he's not Austin Matthews. He's not McDavid. He's not one of those kind of players. But he is a legitimate top-line power forward in the NHL. He's the kind of guy who in a playoff series, you say, hey, I need you to get me a goal, and they find a way to corral the puck and to really dominate it through the zone, and they find a way to get a good look and put it in the net. And Forsberg looked timid, and quite frankly, he didn't look like he was confident on the ice in Game 1. And then there's the goalie. And I think I've heard Robbie Stanley say this a bunch. His record in the playoffs is 3-8. Well, how many playoff games and playoff series does somebody get before we say, you know what, you're good, but you're not good enough to be able to win in the playoffs? And I think that, again, like Barry said, this is where he sits up there and he decides, like, hey, are you a keeper for this group going forward, or are you somebody I really can't count on? That's where I am right now with those guys as the leaders of a team that can contend. They got to prove it. And I'm not just going to expect them to do it because I want them to do it. I want them to do it, But that doesn't mean I can expect them to do it. And so I'm hopeful, but I'm not expecting. But it is time. If those guys are going to lead you to the promised land, it's time for them to do it. And especially in this series against a team in Vancouver that's probably not even that good and just lost their goalie, who's one of their best players. Now, how long is Thatcher Demko out for? We don't know. But, again, I'm done expecting that, Saros will play like an elite goaltender in the playoffs when he hadn't done it. So he needs to do it. The pressure's on him to do it, but I don't feel like he's going to do it. Donovan texts into the text line. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Says, it's time for Philip Forsberg to show up. Agreed. Donovan also mentions the Vancouver fans were incredibly loud. Look, I got two thoughts on the Vancouver fans. The first is, I thought that atmosphere on Sunday was awesome. Like, as somebody sitting at home watching Vancouver's crowd, I was like, man, that crowd looks intense. The second thing is, Predators fans usually get this from the traditional hockey markets, your Montreals, of when Predator fans, somebody hits the ground, Predator fans at the game get up, they scream for a penalty, and all these, traditional hockey market fans are like, they need to learn the game. I can't tell you how many times the Vancouver fans complained for a penalty that just wasn't a penalty, or complained against a penalty that went on Vancouver that was clearly a penalty. There was I want to say it was a tripping the other night where ESPN's showing the video, and there's clearly the guy, putting the stick right at the blade, and the Vancouver fans who are clearly watching the Jumbotron because they're reacting to the Jumbotron, they start booing. I'm like, how can you be watching that and boo? Like, I'm embarrassed when Predators fans boo at something that's a penalty. Now, there have been times where I see a penalty and I'm like, what? And then I look up at the board and I'm like, oh, okay, got it. Yeah, you're right.
Well, the playoffs and the way the refs call penalties is a little tricky because sometimes I feel like they get in their own heads where they maybe make a bad call against a team and they're automatically just already constantly looking for the makeup call.
You know what happened the other night? There was a trip that was called on O'Reilly that led to a power play, and then they tripped O'Reilly again and they didn't call it because they didn't want to put the Preds in a 5-on-3.
Yeah. So in the playoffs especially, I feel like sometimes the refs get in their own heads about trying to even up the penalties. Like, hey, you screwed up. You maybe made a bad call. Like, that doesn't necessarily mean the other team has to get penalized just because you screwed up. So I don't know.
So I actually thought the officiating was okay the other night. I didn't think it was great. I thought it was okay.
I thought it was okay.
I thought the Vancouver fans were very energetic. I think that's a very tough place to play. But you can win there. And so my other thing, though, just so tired of all those people. Y'all need to learn the game. It's like we in Nashville know the game fine. Get off our asses. In Vancouver, they need to learn the game. 615-737-1025. Today's Titans pre-draft press conference started off incredibly odd. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Plus, we'll give something away in the next segment as well. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
All right, good afternoon and welcome. We thank everyone for joining us today. It's an exciting week across the NFL where every organization is preparing for the NFL draft. Heading into this week, we want to take the opportunity for you all to be able to speak with our general manager and our head coach, the two men that are leading our draft process. There are so many people that are involved across football operation to allow this process to be successful.
There you go. That was Chad Brinker kicking off the Titans pre-draft press conference. That was the president of football operations introducing the GM and the coach to talk about the draft. And I saw that today when they had their pre-draft press conference. I thought, what the hell is going on here? Why is Chad Brinker, the guy who's supposedly in charge of the PR department and the IT department, why is he, who's a subordinate supposedly in the personnel department, why is he up there giving what Ian just referred to as what felt like a PowerPoint presentation before he brought in Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan? What is he doing there?
It was like, this is how the draft works, and these are the guys who will be picking the players, in case you needed to know.
But are they picking the players? Because, well, who's in charge? Are you in charge or is Rand in charge? And so a lot of people got mad today because my initial reaction to the pre-draft press conference was, are they demoting Rand? I mean, again, this time last year, Rand Carthon was the general manager of the Titans and reported directly to Amy Adams-Strunk. Now, if you want to say, well, technically Burke Nihill was ahead, fine. Burke's in the same position today that he was this time a year ago. Burke did not get demoted. At least to the best of my knowledge, he didn't get demoted. So last year, Rand was the GM. And last year, Rand held the pre-draft press conference by himself. Today, the president of football operations got up and gave a spiel before turning to the GM and the coach. Again, last year the coach wasn't a part of the pre-draft press conference, but this year he is. Something's not right. And as soon as I said that today, people got mad. And they interpreted that as a slight at Rand Carthon. But see, I think this is the opposite. Because if the Titans have decided to, if I was just anti-Rand Carthon, the way that it gets made out that I am, then I would be saying, I love this. I love that it looks like they demoted him by taking somebody that he hired who was an assistant general manager last year, who was a subordinate to Rand Carthon, and they promoted him to president of football operations and clearly put him in a role where Rand reports to the guy that reported to Rand last year. And I would say, yes, Rand's not in charge. That's if I was as anti-Rand as you guys make me out to be. But I'm really not. I mean, there's a part of me that thinks that I could be wrong about Rand Carthon's ability to run a football team. That I could be wrong about Rand Carthon's ability to evaluate talent. As far as the draft, free agency, you name it, there's a chance I could be wrong. And that Rand could be really good at this, and that Mike Vrabel held him back, and that working with a coach who's not a complete a-hole might actually benefit Rand Carthon. I don't think that's the case, but there's a chance. Well, I want to see if that's the case. But instead, the Titans have added another layer to this. Another layer of confusion. Who's in charge? Titans hired Brian Callahan, and when they hired Brian Callahan, they announced a revamped senior staff. Chad Brinker's no longer assistant GM. He's the president. Okay? Rand Carthon is no longer the general manager. He's the executive vice president / general manager. He got promoted. But did he? Because, again, last year, he only had the owner ahead of him, and now he's got his assistant GM as the president, but the owner says that Rand is in charge of the football team, so then, in theory, the vice president would be more powerful than the president, right? But that doesn't make sense. And they say, well, Rand's job is scouting and being in charge of the football team and deciding the players and everything else. But it was Chad Brinker that went to the Senior Bowl to go scout these guys out. Long story short, I think this is a bunch of bullcrap, is what I think. And I think that there is a fire to this smoke. Just like last year, I told you guys that collaboration between Vrabel and Rand was never going to work. And everybody told me I was wrong. And then I saw the cracks in the foundation, and I brought it up. And everybody told me I was wrong. And then Diana Rossini wrote that Mike Vrabel was coming back as the head coach no matter what. And I was told I was wrong. And I said, I don't believe that. And the reason I don't believe that is because I don't trust the Titans. Because the Titans had lied to me before. They lied about Mike Mularkey, period. So if they lied before, why would I trust them this time? Everybody else trusted Diana Rossini. I didn't. I was right. The thing about the Titans is they can't just say, all right, here's the deal. Rand's in charge, Callahan's coach, and those guys will work together, but at the end of the day, we're going to do what Rand wants to do. They can't say that. And I don't know why they can't say that. But it feels to me like the Titans, quote unquote, promoted Rand, but actually demoted Rand. And I don't like it. If Rand's your guy, then let's see what he can do. It makes my skin crawl every time I hear somebody say, let Rand cook. But if you're going to have that approach, then let him freaking do it. Don't promote somebody to be the president, chef. That doesn't make any sense. Somebody today was texting me about, oh, Jared, what don't you understand? The president of football operations was introducing the vice president. I mean, do you not understand that? I'm like, well, who's in charge? Well, Rand reports to Chad and Amy. Uh-huh. I asked that person, I said, who makes more money? They said, I don't know. I go, that's the point. If I asked you a year ago who makes more money between Rand and Chad Brinker, you know the answer was Rand Carthon. Ian, I'm going to ask you, who do you think makes more money right now, Rand Carthon or Chad Brinker?
That is a good question. I wouldn't be surprised if it was even.
I mean, see, that's the point. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
That's the problem. People are like, oh, no, Jared, you're just a Rand hater. I want to see if Rand can do the job. I don't want to have all these qualifiers. Oh, last year didn't count because of Vrabel. This year doesn't count because of Brinker. Next year doesn't count because of Vin Marino. The next year doesn't. No. Let's go.
I tend to think Carthon would make more, but that's strictly just a guess.
Oh, I think it's Brinker.
You think so?
I think last year Carthon made more. Now I think it's Brinker.
Man, how can you do a swapperoo like that?
Because how can you pay the vice president more than the president?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's just weird business names. I don't know. Corporate world stuff.
No, there's no business where the vice president is better than the president.
Yeah, maybe
That's
not.
what made this whole thing so screwed up from the beginning, is they were like, oh, no, we're empowering Rand more. But he's president. No. He's just handling, like, the turf. Okay? But he's president. Yeah, but he's just handling the turf. Who's going to the Senior Bowl? The president. Got it. Twice Daily. I love Twice Daily. Twice Daily has all your cravings. You can save on every visit. Stop in and get rewarded at Twice Daily, because all you need to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program to unlock special discount savings, enter their sweepstakes, and so much more. Try their new wraps, the Italian, the ham and cheddar, the turkey and Swiss, the Nashville hot chicken, and they're made to order with your favorite toppings. And when you download the Twice Daily app, you can order ahead. At Twice Daily, it's snack time all the time, and they got favorites like chicken fingers, tater rounds, and their brand new pretzels. Plus, I'm a big breakfast guy at Twice Daily. Get the little bagel, oh, it's fabulous. Twice Daily. What are you craving? Predators game day, 102.5, 106.3. The game tonight, it's game number 2 as the Predators take on the Vancouver Canucks from Rogers Arena in Vancouver at 9:07 p.m. because the NHL can't ever drop the freaking puck. Vancouver leads the series 1-0. Of course, they won 4-2 in game number 1. The big news is Thatcher Demko, the starting goalie for Vancouver, is out, which means that Vancouver will be relying upon Casey DeSmith. The difference, Demko's got a 2.48 GAA, goals against. He's averaging 2.5. DeSmith, 2.89, averaging about 3. Save percentage, Demko, 918. DeSmith, 895. Ian, what do I say about goalies who have a save percentage under 9?
Not very good.
I say they suck. With that, we go to the coach's take. Here's Andrew Burnett.
Well, I think I want to take a little bit of the heaviness out of, coming into the rink every day, especially it's not your home locker room, and we were here since Friday. So I just thought it was a good opportunity to have a different scenery, enjoy. It was a beautiful day, clear the head a little bit, and be ready to go tonight.
Okay. Well, they got to get this one tonight. I don't feel – I woke up this morning thinking that if they lost – I woke up this morning and I got myself a take. No, I woke up this morning thinking that if they lost, that the series was probably over. The Demko news probably changes that a little bit. But if they can take tonight and Demko is still out, I feel pretty good about their chances of winning both games at Bridgestone. So this is a big one. This feels like a pivot-type game tonight. We've got 3 hours until puck drop. We've got 2 hours of Predators extra coverage with Max Hers, who's live in Vancouver. That is next. Stillman and Company. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll see everybody tomorrow, too.